puis surtout, on va découvrir cette voie au fur et à mesure. Certainement, ça risque de monter crescendo.
Hello and welcome to the stunning Chamonix landscape. Here we are for the IFSC Lead World Cup. My name is Matt Groom and I'm joined in the commentary box by Campbell Harrison. Campbell, first of all, welcome to Europe. When did you travel over here from Australia? Sorry, but that's like issue with our box there, but we're back now. So Campbell, sorry, you were telling me, coming from Australia, when did you arrive in Europe?
So I arrived in Europe at the start of July, and I've been training at the climbing centre down in Innsbruck for the past almost 2 weeks, getting ready for the season, and then this is my first World Cup of the season, my first World Cup since late 2019, I think, so it's been a little while.
Well, mate, welcome back to the circuit. That is our lead wall here tonight, and a slight change to the schedules that happened earlier today. We're having the men's and the women's semi-finals at the same time, rather than splitting them like we were going to. That's due to the torrential rain that's meant to be turning up tomorrow, so the organisers decided to have it all on the same night, so the conditions were the same. Those are our routes. That one, the camera's panning up, that is our women's route, with the orange holds on the red volume on the left-hand side of the wall. Some interesting sections to this, which we'll be chatting through in a couple of minutes, but there it is, the top of the wall. That is where the athletes are aiming for, and they'll try to clip that final quick draw. The men's is on the right with those blue and yellow holds. So Campbell, first of all, we're looking at the women's semi-finalists. Some strong names in there, but of course we're missing a few Olympians from this event. Do you think that's going to make a difference to the athletes progressing into the finals today?
I mean, potentially. I guess whenever you have big names, it's going to leave names like Janja Garnbret, for instance, who are consistent places in the finals. You're going to have some holes that can be filled, which is nice because I think it provides a nice opportunity as spectators to see some new names at the top of the field, and also as an experience for the athletes themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were watching them walking around today in the Chamonix Centre here. It's such an amazing place to watch climbing. We're literally under the shadow of Mont Blanc, which has been said a lot, but it is true. It looms above us, and the mountains, of course, surrounding the stadium. And that's our lead wall. There it is in all its glory. Earlier on this morning, it had the qualification routes, and the top 26 athletes progressing to this stage in the semi-finals. And we're looking for 8 athletes to make it through into the final round. That route on the right is the men's. Check out that big black ball volume section in the middle. We could see some interesting parts here. The route setter's telling us that apparently small athletes will be able to cram themselves into that little space. We'll see if that happens. And then approaching the top of the wall, a crimpy section to finish off. And of course, the obligatory almost dyno to the top, or pop to the top at least, off that little side pull crimp. Campbell, you had a little time to check this out, the routes. What do you think of them just from a first impression? From
the short period of time in which I got to see them, I think the men's route looked really physical and really unforgiving on some slopey holds. So the conditions could potentially dictate how we maybe see some athletes climbing. At the moment, it's really nice. There's like a nice breeze coming through. So maybe some of the early athletes will have a nice time of it. We'll see. And then the women's, my initial impression was that it maybe wasn't, at first glance, not the hardest women's semi-final I've ever seen, but I think in World Cups it can always surprise you with how physical the moves might be, and the top section definitely looks like really hard. So I'm keen to see how they perform. Hopefully we'll get some good performances and maybe a few fights from the beginning, hopefully.
That's what we want to see. And welcome if you're joining us at home. We're here for the IFSC Lead World Cup, and we're in Chamonix, France, for this round. It's a busy week. We're heading straight up to Briançon after this for the next round of the World Cup. So everyone packing up immediately and heading off there. So if you're into competition climbing, this is a good week and a great week to join us here on the IFSC channel. Hello and welcome. We are seconds away from starting this semi-final. Remember, the schedules have changed a little bit, so we have the men's and the women's taking place tonight. So normal format. There's 2 athletes will be climbing together, and that is our square at the moment, here in the centre of Chamonix. And Campbell, what's the atmosphere like in Chamonix at the moment? Because you've been here a few times. What does it feel like this year?
This year, I mean, obviously there are some stark differences with regard to COVID restrictions, but for the most part, I think I've been pleasantly surprised in coming to Europe at how well everything functions. You know, having to be careful of social distancing and masks and that sort of thing, but otherwise the crowd seems psyched, and it's generally just really spectacular here. I think it's such a nice competition venue with the aesthetic of the place, but also the culture. It's really, really beautiful here, and it's nice to be back, I think.
Well, it's lovely to have you, and thank you for joining me as we get cracking here. That is Michel Hülinger from Switzerland for the women, and for the men, Elias Ensberger on the right, as we stick with him as he starts his route. Just 18, one of many young athletes competing here in Chamonix this weekend. As he immediately pulls on to the beginning of this section, which fairly straightforward early on, nothing really to catch them out, just to get them blood flowing early on.
Yeah, I think so, but I think it still looks quite physical. I think my first impression of the beginning of the men's route was how slopey the holds looked, and not a lot of positivity to them. So I think you just it's on from the get-go. I think you just have to start and keep going. In qualifications, we had like a few rests through the routes, and there were some kind of somewhat friendly starts, and I don't think we're seeing the same thing here in the semi-final.
This is the first section of real note, which is this undercling on the right, and we see a split screen of Michel on the left, and then you got to come up into that little pocket on the left, and then continue. It's just, there's a few ways of doing that little section there, so we'll see how the athletes handle that. Michel Hülinger on the left-hand side. She's 21. She won gold at the European Youth Cup in 2018, so no stranger to success. And last year she actually climbed 8C outdoors, so certainly right up there with the best sport climbers in the world. She makes her way through the first section. This wall split up into different angled terrain. She's on this first part, which is fairly overhanging. I mean, the whole wall really is such an overhanging wall.
Yeah, I think you can't appreciate it from the live stream, and until I came here again, it was even steeper than I remembered. I think it probably kicks off at like 20 degrees and then just gets steeper and steeper. I think the steepest part has to be like 50 maybe. It's exceptionally steep, which makes for an exceptionally long wall. So the routes in Chamonix are always really pumpy.
Yeah, they do seem a bit endless, and you'll see athletes really fighting here tonight. It's a nice split screen of the action. Michel on the left, Elias on the right. Both of them about halfway through now this section. We watched Elias go into this big volume ball section. Apparently, if you're a smaller climber, you could cram yourself into that corner and get some kind of a rest, but the route setters reckoning it actually was harder to get in and out than the rest afforded, and you can see Elias just moving straight through. He's not bothering.
Super high on the wall, considering he's the first climber out for the semi-finals. And like a relatively new name in the circuit from my experience.
Yeah, his first proper senior year in competitions. He's done a lot on the youth scene, but this is where we really get to see what he's made of. You see the camera angle there, you can see that overhang Campbell was talking about.
I would imagine that changing the schedule could pose an issue for the route setters potentially. Like if they've set the route to be climbed the day after, they might have been expecting the athletes to be a little bit more fresh, so potentially they've tweaked the routes up or down accordingly, or maybe they've stayed the same, and it might have a factor, especially also if they've been planning for rain, and right now we're pretty dry. So I would imagine that the schedule change could pose a few more complications than simply just a bunch of athletes climbing a little earlier than planned.
Yeah, we will see that decision made at about 1 p.m. Central European time here in France. As we watch Michel. This section, hard to read. A lot of volumes, a lot of toe hooks, and you can see the tick marks on the volume. That's to indicate for the athletes where those toe hooks actually are, just to give a little bit of a clue. There was an observation time to this route. The athletes had a few minutes before we went on air just to check out the route, because they haven't seen it before on-site competition. As Michel just takes a moment, really quite high up the route.
Yeah, still looking fairly confident. I think from both our athletes so far, we've seen some pretty strong performances in terms of how high they've gotten, but like what that will translate to in terms of a result is another game, really.
Yeah, exactly. We're here to commentate, not predict. We wouldn't dare. As you see, Michelle just waiting a second here. This is one of the only rests for the women's route, but it's such a steep part of the climb that those big holds which she had with her right before she got that crimpy section, it's not the best resting position.
Oh,
she
wow.
power screams into that.
That was cool. Let's see if she'll be able to make this clip now. Came together, but she's starting to look like she's really fighting.
Screaming her way up the route as she enters the final head wall section, but what a performance from Michelle. Another clip done, ever closer, and now onto this final part of the route, these big black slopey volumes. You have to work your feet and your hands up.
She must be coming up on her time limit pretty soon, I would imagine. I think she's been on the wall for a while.
Yeah, no clock and screen, but we'll keep you updated if we can see it. We can't see one right now, but what a fight from her. Nearing the top of this wall, our first athlete out, and what a performance. Heel hooks in. She's going to look to go up to that big orange volume using that intermediate hold, the one in between. There's the intermediate, and she just can't quite make it stick, but what a fight from her. So Campbell, I mean, it's hard for us to make conclusions on this, to say, look, the women's route might be a bit easy because Michelle might have just had an amazing day, but it is interesting that she got so high on it. And she was one of the, coming out first means she's qualified last for the semi-finals.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see, and I think this season so far especially, we've seen some pretty interesting results coming from the qualifications. Often climbers performing very inconsistently across the routes, which is cool to see. I think it makes for a spicier game than we're used to seeing in the lead climbing. It's something we're quite accustomed to generally on the bouldering circuit. Yeah, Chris is making maybe making that little squeeze work. He's definitely one of the shorter athletes in the field, so if anyone is small enough to make it work, like the route setters have said, it would likely be him.
It's good to see him in a semi-final. He's been around on the circuit all year, trains like an absolute maniac. I've watched him do it, so it's great to see all his hard work paying off as he comes about almost 3/4 way through this route. You can see the sections there as he split rests in this overhanging section.
Not necessarily the most consistent climber on the circuit, but for sure one of the strongest. And super hard worker. His work ethic is exceptional.
So he winds his way out of that the big red volume you can see right in the center of the wall. We'll be referring to that a lot in a sort of triangle shape. You can see his left foot is near. Now he's just taking a moment to pause here and rest before launching himself into the top section of this route. See the cameras on the wall there capturing as much of the action as we can. Christophe cuts loose. Ah! Screams again for the crimp, looking like he's starting to burn out here, but somehow he's still going. Finally, we see the fall. What an effort from him.
Absolutely. It's really nice when you pull onto a route in a World Cup and you get the opportunity to fight. I think it's indicative of an exceptional performance in and of itself. If you get to the point where you've climbed well enough, you haven't made any mistakes, World Cup routes can generally be super unforgiving. It's really easy, whether you're the strongest climber in the field or not, to make a mistake. And so when you come off of a World Cup route feeling like you've been able to give it all, the result can sometimes come secondary to that, I think.
Yeah, climbing is often more against yourself than anything else. Of course, that takes a bit of a backseat in competitions, but it's something you'll hear a lot in the climbing world, people saying that, and it's that self-fulfillment.
Yeah, I think there are a few sports in which mistakes happen as fast as they do in climbing. And so, yeah, when you have that opportunity to really give it all and feel like you've really put your training to the test, it's super validating and it's super satisfying.
We're watching Sabine Van Essen on the wall right now from the Netherlands. One of the athletes perhaps we won't often see in the semi-final, but great to see her here. She's only 15 years old as
I
well.
was going to say, she looks very young, so I wouldn't be surprised if this is toward the beginning of her career as a senior athlete.
Exactly.
15, she's about as young as they can be in the senior circuit.
It is incredible, isn't it? I mean, we do have a young field of athletes here today, but when you see someone like Sabina climbing, it makes you realise how talented and how young some of these climbers are. She won gold at the Europe Continental Youth Cup in Belgium before 2021, so one to watch out for in the future for sure as she gets those toe hooks locked in. Campbell, this area of the route was described to be quite hard to read for the athletes. Why would that be? Is it just because of the amount of volumes and holds and angles?
I think so. I think it's quite three-dimensional. The geometric shapes can often pose multiple perceived methods of completing the sequence, but generally they've been set in a way that there's one good way to do it, and even if you can find an alternate method through, you might be using more or less energy accordingly, and so I think it's really easy to get unstuck if you think maybe that you can skip a sequence, maybe the holds look closer together than they might be, and also when the holds are on volumes like that, it's often hard to tell what they might feel like when you're going to get up there. They could be quite blunt, they could be sharp, and nice rests, you never really know. So you have to kind of just go for it with an open mind, really.
Sabina now, she's near the top of the head wall, starts to power screen her way through this section. I think by now we've worked out that this route is certainly climbable, and it's going to come down to a few holds that will make the difference to who gets through into this final. So every athlete going to have to go as close to the top as possible in order to make it. Sabina going nice and horizontal. She works her way up through this section and then makes the clip. That orange volume, the big one, so the orange hold above her, there is a hidden hold on top of it. So where the white patch of chalk is on the large hole, there is something up there. It's not very good, but it's a little edge, and it's something the athletes might not have seen from the ground, so it'd be quite interesting to see if they hit it.
She's looking super comfy as well. I think we saw Michelle Huliger really fight, but Sabina's just not struggling so far, I think. But I think there we go. I think this last section is where it really, really switches on. We could kind of see that supposed hidden jib. It's quite small. It's maybe like 1 or 2 fingers wide. I think you have to be super accurate. So that could pose a problem for the athletes coming out later on in the round.
Now Monchois from France. Progression to the final, 16.6% of the time. Such a strong climber, very recently did a 9A in Seus, so he's on form.
I think the rise of now Monchois has been a long time coming. I think he's always been one of those climbers, or for a long time he's been one of those climbers that has shown a lot of promise. And yeah, maybe hasn't found exactly that consistency, but again, like I said earlier in the World Cup circuit, consistency is something that's really hard to come by. But he's certainly a climber with like a lot of talent who clearly trains really hard, and so I think on his day we can see something pretty exceptional. And as we can already see, he fights super hard every single time, which is something I think a lot of the French athletes have in common.
Yeah, the French team very strong this year, has some really good performances so far. Monchois makes his way, nearing the top of the head wall. We know this is where the route starts to kick in, and the pump is certainly biting for him. And you can see fingers uncurling on those holds now as he takes the swing down to the Chamonix floor. Great effort.
He looks happy too. He looks pleased with having the opportunity to fight hard. I think you could hear him breathing and screaming. He was really giving it everything. So he looks satisfied to have had that opportunity.
There's Giorgia Tessio from Italy on the left. She makes her start to her semi-finals. Her best result was in Briançon in 2019, where she got an 8th place. But she did win an Italian bouldering cup this year, so certainly has potential on form.
known her as a strong boulderer for a while, but she's quite a strong lead climber as well. She seems to perform relatively consistently across the 2 disciplines, which bearing for Paris, post-Tokyo, not a bad thing.
I was going to ask you because, I mean, we've seen the athletes who wanted to qualify for the Olympics and take part in the combined competitions having to do speed and lead and bouldering. And I think we're seeing boulderers who used to be just pure boulderers now becoming very, very good lead climbers and just utilising both skills. But it's not easy to do, is it, to be good at both of those disciplines?
No, I don't think so. I think to a degree you have to be good at both of them to an extent, but there's a difference between being good at lead and / boulder and being elite in lead or boulder. And so, you know, every boulderer is going to be good at lead climbing and vice versa, especially climbing on rock, where you have the opportunity to practice in a red point scenario. But to perform well in a World Cup scenario, an on-site format competition is very, very different. But I think a huge factor is that prior to the combined format, I think there was kind of a weird stigma almost around climbers specializing, that lead climbers are lead climbers, boulderers are boulderers, and speed climbers are speed climbers, and people being forced into broadening their horizons in terms of the disciplines that they specialize in has really opened the mind and like the physical repertoire of all of the climbers. And so it's been really interesting to see some climbers embrace a discipline that they hadn't necessarily expected to enjoy so much, and really showing some talent as well.
Yeah, it's something someone told me that I thought about, which was that just the athletes just get an opportunity to see how their friends, their colleagues, how they climb. You know, if you're a lead climber, you might not have done any speed, and suddenly you have to do it, and you appreciate the athletes and their athletic ability by doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there are skills that are very much complementary across the disciplines. I think there's a lot to be said about the power and dynamism you can gain from speed climbing, and the endurance and cool-headedness that you have to be able to master to be a good lead climber. The sort of like quick-paced thinking that you have in bouldering and the tactics. I think they all cross over to some degree. And, you know, everyone's going to have the discipline that they specialize in and that they're best at, but there's certainly skills to be gained across each form of climbing that can really benefit you across the disciplines.
Georgia Tessio getting easily through this first section of the route. No problem for any of the women really so far on this part. She just heel hooks. Side pull jug there on the right, and then this is a powerful bump out to the left, which she makes look easy. Georgia comes into this final part of the route. Oh, just drops it as I said it.
Yeah, I think she was just sagging a little bit in her shoulders as she came into that move, and it kind of just sapped the energy from her whole core, and as the swing started to come in, it was gone, unfortunately.
That is Hannes Pumann on the wall. These athletes, remember, coming out in the order they qualified from the qualification round, so the athletes coming out first, they will have qualified last. So some big names to come at the end of this semi-final. But we have got some missing names as the Olympians in climbing, they start their preparations for Tokyo. And most at this stage have gone, but we have got a few Olympians still in the roster. Not much of a chance to rest on this men's route. It's fairly relentless.
No, I think it's pretty consistent. I think maybe you get the opportunity to shake out between holds or chalk up, but beyond that, I don't think there's much of an opportunity to stop and rest. Which, I mean, from a spectator's perspective, I think is often the best kind of lead route, when the fittest climbers and the strongest climbers are able to achieve rests that the others can't, and everybody else is just fighting tooth and nail from the beginning. I think it's always really exciting. I think the exciting part of lead climbing isn't when they fall, it's the moments leading up to the fall when you can see it happening and you just never know how long it's going to last.
Absolutely, we might be about to see one of those as Hannes Pumann cuts loose, screaming his way up the route. This is exactly what Campbell was talking about the moments before the fall. Hannes must be on the red line now as he matches that slopey dish that we saw Christoph take a swing off earlier.
Oh, and he just came short of that jib. I don't think I've ever heard Hannes make that noise before. It's so fascinating having the microphones up. I've genuinely enjoyed it with the bouldering, having the microphones quite close to the climbers on the wall. I think you get a much more intimate view, a much more nuanced view of exactly how they're feeling when they're on the wall. Often you see these climbers who make everything look easy, and as soon as you put a microphone up in their face, you know what it's really like. It's like these aren't the routes that you find in the gym. Like this is next level.
It really is. I mean, as a general grade, we're looking at probably 8B plus for the women's route, maybe 8C, 8C plus for the men's. But remember, it's on site and it's just a different style. It's nothing like you see in a normal gym.
That was something I was going to say, and I was talking about this with some other competitors the other day. Often in a gym, an 8B plus, you might find the opportunity to rest between the cruxes and take your time, but in a World Cup scenario, they're very much set, so you don't get the opportunity to rest, to at least rest both arms at the same time, you know, or to rest at all even. It's generally very consistent. You can often have the opportunity to shake out between moves, but the moves tend to be too full body physical to be able to move back and forth between the two.
We're watching Manon Hilly now from France. She's having a great season as well, performed well in Innsbruck. You see her moving through this first section, perhaps making it quite as fluid as we've seen some of the other women look so far, maybe just finding her rhythm.
I think she has a bit of a rough and tumble style. And it's definitely interesting to watch different athletes like climb differently on the route. And something that I think like I've had to get used to as a climber is that making it look pretty doesn't always necessarily mean you're going to have the highest score. Whereas in that instance, off a little bit earlier than I think we've seen some other climbers.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what happened there. I think she might have just maybe misread the sequence, but it certainly looked like she was struggling a little bit. But Manon Hilly's evening is done.
That's again exactly what I was talking about before with World Cup routes being so unforgiving. It's really easy to make one mistake that compounds into 2, 3, 4, and before you know it, you're fighting. And like we said, there aren't any rests, so you don't really have the opportunity to get it back. So you have to be on the mark from the ground to have a good performance, and that's why we've been seeing different names in the semi-finals than we might usually, or inconsistent results across the routes, people qualifying high going into semis and placing quite low coming out, because the routes are designed to make you climb perfectly and to make you fight really hard as soon as you pull onto the wall.
Well, here's a man who's used to fighting. It's Milan Preška. He's 25. He performed well in Villars a week ago, making the semi-finals there, and he's done it again here. But he has never made it through semis so far, so will this be his night? There's a lot of stars out there today.
I think he's made it into the top 20 a couple of times, maybe. At least once, for sure. And again, like another climber who's super strong and fights really well, but doesn't necessarily always find the consistency, I don't think. But yeah, he's a really nice guy, so I'm hoping he can put in a good fight.
All the athletes, or a lot of the athletes certainly in the crowd at the moment. This is something we've seen throughout these COVID times, which is the athletes supporting each other. Here in Chamonix, people are allowed in. Spectators are filtering in and out. Tomorrow it's a ticketed event, and expect a lot of people in this square for the finals. It's an absolute spectacle here in Chamonix. If you're just joining us, hello and welcome. My name is Matt Groom. I'm here with Campbell Harrison from Team Australia, and it's an absolute pleasure to have him in the commentary box with me
Thank
today.
you, thanks for having me.
As we watch Milan now into this volume pressy section. We've seen a few athletes do this in a few different ways, but
so we're talking about difficult sections of the route to read, and for me, I think sections like this with these large holds can be really tricky. Again, sometimes there are little jibs that you might not be able to see. Other times it's just a wrestle, or it might look like you have to wrestle it when actually there's some kind of subtle way that you can finesse yourself into a rest position, or put your body weight over the large feature. And in the same vein, sometimes there's not, and climbers will spend unnecessary time almost fighting the wall rather than progressing. Like we saw Christoph Hanke a little bit earlier before, sort of fighting his way into that potential rest position, trying to sort of squeeze himself between the features, and I think losing some energy as a result.
Yeah, he seemed to climb himself into a position and then immediately think better of it. And try to reverse it out.
Sure.
Just caught that left hand there, you saw, almost went as he chalks up. Bumps his feet up now and into this crimpy section of the route, going a little better through here. Had a slight moment a couple of seconds ago. But this is where we're seeing a lot of the men having to start to fight as he makes the clip. Explain jibs to us, because that's something that usually you hear jibs in the sort of skateboard world, snowboard world, skiing world, jibbing around, but jibs in climbing slightly different.
Funnily enough, I actually don't know what a jib is in a snow sports context. Essentially in climbing, a jib is just arm we lose Milan, just there. Yeah, a jib is just a small, in the United States they often call it like a piggyback hold. It's just a small hold attached to a larger hold. And yeah, like I was saying earlier, sometimes you can see one and maybe you know it's going to be a rest. If it's quite positive, a small hold can become quite a good one on a volume. And then sometimes they're just these tiny little no shadow pancakes, and it can be super deceptive and make for really, really tricky sequences.
Martina Demmel now from Germany. She's about halfway through and the rain has just started to fall here in Chamonix. We're okay, we're under a bit of an umbrella here and the wall is fairly sheltered, but this could make a difference to the conditions that we see here tonight. Campbell, you must have climbed in these kind of conditions before. What's it like as an athlete when you're on the wall and you start to aware that it's raining? Does it start to panic you a little bit?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever been on the wall when like rain has started to hit me, but I've certainly been a part of competitions where we've been battling the rain as a condition where the climbing has stopped and started. I know yesterday the forecast was looking like the rain was going to come in a lot earlier, and I was climbing quite late in the qualification, so that for me was quite stressful because I thought maybe that I would be warming up 2 hours before my route, which would then become 3 hours and 4 hours as we tried to navigate the rain stopping and starting. We've been lucky so far, but I think that's the most stressful part of it. Generally the wall stays dry as long as there's not too much wind, but you know, it can certainly be a tricky thing to navigate, and also being really aware that you're not stepping in any puddles or making any silly mistakes like that, because you know in that 40 seconds before you pull on and you step in a wet part of the floor, it can be a complete disaster if you're about to pull onto a single attempt on site for a semi-final.
Yeah, more for them to think about. That was Martina Demmel we saw going high up the wall, just missing a right cross through. Nino Grunfelder from Switzerland, he's just 19, another one starting his competition career really, although he's been climbing for a long time outside of the IFSC as well. As we see him cutting loose, popping up to that, can sometimes be the quickest way through a section and also give you a bit of confidence perhaps. If you stick a move like that, you think, hey,
yeah, I think so.
Well.
I think we're starting to lose some of our paperwork here in the commentary booth. Yeah, no, I think a very valid strategy in lead climbing can be to just make progression as quickly as possible. Some climbers are able to stop and rest, and it's more within their style, and other climbers have to just keep moving. And I think I'm definitely a climber who needs to be able to stop and think about it and relax to keep that composure. And then some climbers, Jan Hoyer for instance, talks often about how he feels like leaving his chalk bag behind, because a safer bet for him is just to keep moving and like sort of battle the clock.
Yeah, Jan Hoyer's speed up a lead wall is legendary in IFSC Cups. He really goes for it. Nino Grunfelder just resting his way up through this section. In the bottom quarter of this wall, this big blue slopey volumes will take its toll on the forearms. You can see there's open grips.
I think a huge deciding factor in World Cup is the athlete's ability to commit. Something that I noticed, especially moving from the youth circuit onto the senior circuit, isn't necessarily always the grades of the routes, but just the full body commitment of every single move. And you have to be really, really sure of yourself every time that you decide you're going to progress to the next hold. And so having that capacity to just move with confidence is as important of a factor as the pure physical conditioning that you have and your capacity to actually do the move. You have to just go for it. Got Julie Fieser pulling onto the wall now. Strong climber from Austria. She had a pretty standout performance, I remember, in Briançon last year in the World Cup. And I think she's another one of those climbers that is like almost there. I think her first final is on the horizon.
Yeah, I was watching her climbing a lot in Innsbruck, and she just has a confidence I haven't quite seen from her before. It's just the way she kind of carries herself at the moment. She's feeling it this season, I think.
And she's just made such significant improvements, I think, in some standout weaknesses that she used to have that she just doesn't have anymore. She's quite a strong boulderer as well when she has her day. Also, really, really creative on the wall.
Well, creativity. That's the first time, to my knowledge, so far we've seen an E-bar in that section.
Yeah, I think Michelle Hooliger might have made somewhat of an E-bar as well, but Julie's really milking it, and we saw that in Villars last weekend as well. And I remember watching her the other day in an Austrian climbing comp simulation. Same sort of thing. There's lots of these volumes, and the ways that she was able to just like move her body into these positions where she made best use out of all the holds was really, really cool to watch. And I think, yeah, I think she's definitely got creativity on her side when she's climbing, and exceptional endurance. Sometimes she can just go and go and go.
Well, she's going to have to here, because this is where the route starts to kick in. She's resting nicely though, and has rested her way through that bottom section well. We did lose Nino there, Grunfelder, from the men's on the right-hand side. Julia into these complicated sections. This is the part we were chatting about earlier, which can be quite difficult to read. She looks out to that tick mark on the left-hand side, that bit of chalk showing the way for the toe hooks on the left. And you'll see her now swinging her legs all the way from that right over to the left. Resting so well. I mean, the endurance, as you said, is one of her strengths, but the fact she can find those rests is key.
She's often a really, really composed climber when she's on the wall. She looks really calm and collected. Able to make good of some of the trickier rests that you might find on the wall. She was saying she had a bit of a rough experience of the qualifications during warm-up. She split her finger, and so that was a bit of a factor going into the first route, which I don't think went so well. But she had a really, really good fight on the next one. I think she ended up timing out actually, but yeah, placed super well. But again, I think we're seeing her come out quite and then we lose her early, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't think she was quite expecting that moment of slip, because he's just a little bit disappointed as she comes down. Immediately we're on to Ross Fulkerson. He looked very good to me in the qualifying rounds today.
Yeah, I haven't climbed with him much before. I know he's a really strong boulderer as well. And he looked really fit in qualies as well.
Yeah, he rested at Villars, interestingly, decided not to compete there, so he had a comp off between times. So let's see if that rest has done him any good as he comes up into this first harder section to read. You get that hold he's about to come up to with the blue and yellow mixed on it. Quite difficult there, because those holds can be set in any way the route setters dream of. Climbers haven't really seen those kind of holds before, so
no, it's a bit of a new sort of aesthetic trend that's been happening. And it's interesting because the holds, like in this instance, there's 3 kind of separate compartments or separate pieces to the whole structure, and any one of them could be the most positive. You don't really know until you pull onto the wall, really. And it can also make what was a familiar hold quite unusual by putting it at a slightly different angle and changing it in that sense.
Yeah, the route setters get more and more toys to play with nowadays. You know, we have dual textured, we got those things, whatever they're called. He just misses that left slap up from Ross. He looked like he was going well, He's a much taller climber than some of the climbers we see here today. That move looked awkward as he tried to reach around. Do you think that would have had any effect?
I think he was already kind of starting to fight and starting to wrestle, not necessarily looking like super pumped and fatigued, but just like maybe he was having to like work a little harder and focus a little more than he might have been at the beginning. Yeah, potentially his height could have come into it. I think the size and shape of your body is going to have varying effects on how you might approach a sequence, and in that instance it might have been a hindrance.
We're just watching Nolwenn Arc, another member of Team France. Romain de Grange, who is a legend in the lead climbing scene, one of the coaches for Team France, and it's really good to see him back actually. If I'm watching him compete for years, to see him in a more coaching role, and obviously making an impression on this French team.
Yeah, I love seeing the old athletes come back as national team coaches. I think they're such prominent features of the circuit, and it's almost sad to see them go. But then seeing them come back in this different capacity, we also have Katja Salwein in the crowd as well as coaching for the Austrian team. And it's really nice to just still have them be a part of it, and to be able to see the knowledge that they're able to pass on to the next competitors is really cool. And in some instances pass on to people that they were competing against themselves only a few years ago, which I think is also really, it's a really cool to see as well.
Yeah, it's a fascinating dynamic as they walk around.
Yeah.
That scoreboard on the right-hand side, that's provisional. We have a lot of athletes to come, but currently that is our leaderboard at the moment. And those numbers on the right-hand side, that is the number of the hold they get to. Obviously, a top is best, but the higher up you go, the more points you get to try to get into that finals place. 8 athletes go through into the finals. Nolwenn Arc here with a lovely flowy style. She makes clips nice and calmly, looks in control at the moment.
Yeah, I think she's a fun climber to watch, and she's had some pretty close runs to finals in the past. So I know she tends to favour this sort of endurance style, so this route could potentially suit her. So it'd be interesting to see how she fares.
Not much feet out on the left-hand side of this section. You've got to use those orange balls, and it can just be a bit awkward to get your body in the right position. You kind of are looking for a foothold out on the left there, and they don't give it to you.
Yeah, and you have this quite secure section on these balls here, and then moving into what looks like a quite sketchy, insecure movement through this feature sequence. You need to be quite accurate with those toe hooks. Being able to shift styles is a very valuable skill within the World Cup circuit as well.
On the right there, that's Sebastian Hellenke of Germany. We were missing him for a while from the competition scene. It's nice to see him back. He did well in Villars.
Yeah, we lost him. Well, not lost him, but I think he took a back seat to the World Cup circuit for a little while. And I was training with him just before the comp in a gym in Switzerland, and he's looking in really, really, really good shape, and I think has the potential to start pushing to some of those results that we saw from him a few years ago.
Yeah, it's nice to have him back actually. He's a big character, not just because of the amazing haircut, just because of who he is. He's just a big presence.
He is. He's a big personality, but he's super friendly. I think he has that kind of grungy look about him with the hair. He's had that haircut I think since he was 16, maybe younger. I don't know. But he's has this super soft voice, and it's just really lovely, really friendly, and someone that you want to see well when he do well when he pulls onto the wall, I think.
And he is doing well as he drops onto that left to get a little bit of a rest there. Those feet, very, very bad on those volumes. It doesn't allow you a huge amount of time to stop as he heel hooks. As he looks for the bump up with the left, misses and readjusts. Starting to look a little tired now, but makes that stick. And 2 big heel hooks in order to rest on that section. On the left, Nolwenn Arc making very good progress as she comes past the point where we've lost a few athletes. Still haven't seen a top on this route yet, but we are getting closer and closer. Sebastian looking a little bit uncomfortable down there.
Yeah, but he's managed to find this sort of creative little drop knee solution. But again, like we heard the route setter say before, it looks like it might be really tricky for him to get back out of that sequence again. So
Nolwenn Ark here, as she eyes up this intermediate hold. We've lost a few climbers on. She's going to have to push out to that statically, which she does. 2 holds to go. She drops that left knee down. And you can see the little screw on top of the volume. That's what she's aiming for. Finds it with the fingers.
She's just looking so calm and so chilled. Like there's nothing on the line at all. It's really cool.
Very impressive stuff here. Are we going to see our first top of this evening? She comes in. There's a little dyno pop to finish at the end. Although she's going to try to do it statically, does it very well. Nice.
Wow.
And our first top from Nolwenn.
That's early in the semi-final round to be seeing our first top. Definitely from a strong athlete for sure, but I'm really curious to see what happens from here.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. There's going to be some maths going on behind the scenes to work out all these scores. Meanwhile, Sebastian Helenke, 46 World Cups for him, such an experienced man. Just slips, not slips, just goes going up to that right hand.
Yeah, he was on the wall for a while. I think we saw him fighting a long time ago. We watched Nolwenn for a little while and then came back and he's still going.
Yeah, man with some serious pump in his arms right now. Great performance from Sebastian. Will it be enough? We are about 8 climbers into our semi-finals. If you want to keep up with the live scores, it is being updated on the screen, but do download the IFSC app, which is free to do so. And you can follow along from there. Welcome to Chamonix, if you're just joining us, the home of mountaineering, I controversially say. And certainly a spectacular place for a climbing competition. We're in the main square here. It is raining, as you can see. Our hardy supporters are putting up with it though, and that's the backdrop that we have to look at. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that, does it? Diago Lem just pointing out on the top left of the wall, and then the peaks behind, full of climbs, epics, routes. And a very special place to watch some competition climbing. Tonight it's the semi-finals for the men and the women. That slight change to our schedules on that one. And tomorrow night we have the finals. So we just take a slight pause in proceedings here. Let's have a look at our leaderboard at the moment. Nolwenn Ark, she's top. We just saw her climb, followed by Sabine Van Essen, Michelle Hulinger in 3rd place at the moment. Remember, the top 8 go through, and that is likely to change as we have some strong names coming. Lynn Vandermeer at 22. Making her way through this first section nice and easily at the moment. Using those crimps, and then on the right hand side is Diego Faubert. Another 18-year-old joining us today. He's just started moving into senior comps, although he was 13th in Briançon. But he's had an incredibly strong youth showing, including 2nd place in the 2020 Continental Youth Cup. So pedigree from that youth scene coming through. And we were chatting about the youth scene earlier. Is that a transition that you really remember doing?
Yeah, I guess so. I think, well, I mean, coming from Australia, I guess it's probably a very, very different experience to what they have coming in Europe. I think I remember going to youth competitions. For me, for Australia in general, youth competitions were once a year. World Youth Championship, that was it, other than like our domestic competitions. And so, you know, every year we would prepare, and this was just the peak event of the season, and whether you climbed well in your qualifications or not, like, dictated whether or not you had a satisfying season, essentially. And then we would be traveling with our parents and with national team coaches, and a fair degree of support. And then moving into the senior scene, no support, no coaches until recently, and then again with COVID coming around, not anymore. But yes, I think in that sense it's a very, very stark transition. And then the feeling on the wall is also very, very different. I found youth competition routes were hard, but they felt like friendly and forgiving, and like, you know, they had the feet to give you the opportunity to really put in a good fight. World Cups don't care how far you came or how hard you worked to get there. If you make a little mistake, it's over, and that's a really, really stark difference between the youth circuit and the World Cup circuit. And often you see climbers who are really successful on the senior circuit not necessarily having the same success on the youth circuit, because it's just a completely different style of climbing, essentially.
You've just come up with the best one-liner I've heard there. World Cups don't care.
No,
we
they
can
don't.
see they don't care as he takes that swing. That's Diego coming down there.
Yeah.
But it is true, because it's just unrelenting, isn't it, the standard here?
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, the amount of times like I've seen top-level climbers just absolutely blow it at the first couple of draws of the route and then top the next one or something, you know. I think my first takeaway from the Senior World Cup circuit was that the routes are hard for everybody, and the result is kind of dictated by who's able to fight the hardest, you know, who's willing to not concede.
We just watched Lynn Vandermeer taking a fall about halfway through this route, as I look upwards, peering out from under our umbrella. That's our umbrella, in fact. That's where myself and Campbell are, that black tent down there on the left-hand side of the wall. And that is our current men's leaderboard. Hannes Boomen in first place, Christoph Hanke in second, Sebastian Helenke in third at the moment. Top 8 go through. Ross Fulkerson at the moment is sitting right on the bubble, and I have a feeling his place is not going to stay.
I think with only one spot beneath him, it to be 8th out of 9, unlikely to progress through the final. But with changing conditions, as I said before, I don't know if he'll necessarily stay in that sort of like second last place. We had a really, really nice breeze coming through earlier. The first climbers had really, really slick conditions, which has potentially contributed to why we've seen such big numbers so early. And now we're seeing a few more slips coming out. I think when you have an outdoor venue like this, it's kind of inevitable that there's some degree of change in the conditions, but managing that is part of the sport for sure.
Yeah, it's certainly got more humid as this rain's come over and the cloud has pressed down on us. It just feels humid and moist out here in the stadium. Mejdi Schalk, silver medal recently for him, for bouldering in Salt Lake City, and 38th in Villars, so he's found his form on the bouldering circuit, not quite yet on the senior lead circuit, but will today be his breakthrough as he comes into this first little section with those pockets, making it look very straightforward for him, cruising through that part and a pop up to this crimp. And he transitions into the slopey section. One of the nice things we've been seeing recently is the routes split up via colours like this. It's something that, for me as well, yeah, when you're a viewer and you're looking at that, it's hard to see quite where they are. Splitting them into colours, you know they're approaching the next section.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it definitely adds this like visual cue that you're changing styles or changing paces. Yeah, it's a very, very different experience, I think, watching the World Cup in person, being able to see the route in its entirety. And it's nice to see the stylistic changes complemented with an aesthetic one as well.
Mejdi then, about to come up to this complicated section, that big black volume there, the ball-shaped thing. We've seen a few methods through that.
And Sophie was another interesting one in qualifications where she has a fairly stark contrast between her results. I think it was a tied 9th place and a tied 31st place, so you know, quite a gap there. So she could potentially be a wild card in what we see from her in the semi-final, because obviously we know she has the potential to climb into the top 10. We've seen her on the podium before, but then also, you know, maybe there are other factors, stylistic weaknesses, or maybe just a tendency to make mistakes that might dictate how she performs.
Mejdi on the right-hand side, he's made his way very quickly through that section. We blinked for a second and he was through it. And now starting to snatch a little bit at quick draws and drops that one, hasn't made that clip. Now gets it in. Starting to power scream his way through this physical section. Somehow stays on. What a move from him, up with the right. He's pushing on now. He's got seconds left in his arms and finally takes the swing. Sophie-Anne Collier continues her route. What a fight from Medji then, good to see.
Absolutely. Being able to stay calm and fight through a clip like that and then keep climbing and not let it phase you is such a skill. It's something you really have to condition with just hours and hours of training and like just learning to trust your ability to hold on even when you feel like you're peeling away. I think that's another like really important factor within lead climbing, that it's not necessarily to do with your physical capacity, whether or not you can hold on to the hold while you need to clip, but just mentally being able to remain calm of mind while making that clip, while being above the draw. Maybe you've got a lot of the route left to go, and you know, it might be a mistake that's going to haunt you later on in the route, but you can't be thinking about it in the moment.
It's a feeling that a lot of climbers watching will understand, that the fumble for a clip and that moment of panic that seems to come up into your chest when you're missing it.
Yeah, and it's really easy to think that you should keep climbing or go backwards, there's some kind of better position. And again, World Cups are super sketchy and super unforgiving, and so you often, it might feel terrible, but it is the best position, and once you decide that you're going to do it, you just have to do it. I think that was a really prime example of that, and then he was able to, because he didn't get frazzled, he was able to keep moving and like put in a few more good moves.
And Sophie Collier, meanwhile, has paused a little bit on this 3D part of the wall, but she's got through it well, and now let's see how much she's got in her arms left after that. Out to this crimp as she bumps that hand over to the right, trying to make space for the match. And then that left leg pressing out in order to make that little pop to the jug. Too steep to really rest here in this moment. You can see how steep it is. Look at the quick draws in the wall. She takes a swing going up to the crimp there. Looks a little disappointed. She disappears behind.
The first of the Bertrand brothers from Canada. We've got Oscar.
Yeah, it's nice to see two brothers. His brother will be competing later on.
I was chatting
Martin.
to Oscar like for a little bit. He speaks French actually, so him and I were chatting to the French coach this morning. Very, very broken, the pair of us, but it was fun nevertheless.
And that is Oscar as he makes the clip nicely. Just looking a little unsettled at the moment as he starts entering this part of the route, which is pumpy, and that bump there so physical, and then the toe, and the mic picking up every sound that he's making. He's talking to us up there. As you said, really good to see that athlete's personality come out, and it's captured by those mics so well.
Yeah, absolutely. Although I think we might have been catching some noise from the ground there. I don't know if it's Oscar who's giving himself a pep talk while he's on the wall.
We'll have to watch.
But we can hear him breathing, which I think is really interesting as well, being able to hear, like, I think being able to breathe consistently is really important, and you're hearing Now Monchois was a really good example of that as well. It's cool to catch those subtle little features of what make elite climbers so good at what we do.
Oscar going well here. We've seen some heel hooks being used on both sides of that volume. He decides not to.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing some slips. We've got some rain coming through on the side of the tent here.
I'd say it's been a very rainy season so far. Innsbruck, our commentary box got pretty much flooded there. We're getting flooded here in Chamonix, but so far the wall is dry, or it looks dry.
I remember the 2016 season, we had 4 World Cups in a row, and it was just like one after the other. The same weather system followed us from one comp to the next, and I remember my backpack was just soaked for an entire month. Like, I don't think it ever dried. Like, it's so funny, the summers here can be so hot, sometimes overbearingly so, and then other times just wet and cold and dreary. This morning we had like some really searing heat, like I think I had a little bit of sunburn on my face. Right now we've got, I wouldn't say it's pouring rain, but you know, it's fairly consistent. And then tomorrow I think we don't even creep over 10 degrees on the forecast.
Yeah, tomorrow is
rain and thunder, 100% chance of rain and thunder all day.
It's going to be dramatic tomorrow, so do not miss it. We can see some slips and spills. We're watching Eliska Adamovska. She takes a moment to rest before the orange ball section of this route. That locked in heel hook on the right. Crosses through onto that crimp. You go from fairly physical, open-handed moves into this crimpy section, which is always quite a hard transition.
Yeah, drastic stylistic changes. Changes of pacing, being able to like maintain that sort of like mental plasticity, switching between movement repertoires very quickly.
And we chatted about the difference between your average gym climbing route and these World Cup routes, and that is something that's a bit different. Usually in a gym, you'll see a style for a route, perhaps a little changes as you go. But these, I mean, you've just got a total 360 in terms of style halfway through these things.
Yeah. I guess because it's, you know, they're not commercial routes, like they're not set to appeal to anyone. I guess it kind of goes along with that theme of World Cups don't care who you are, where you come from. It's like these routes aren't being set to like serve any kind of purpose for the athletes other than to make them fight hard and get a split. And often the best way to do that is to not trick them, but get them thinking and really like run them through their paces.
Yeah, mix it up a bit.
And it makes for a good show as well. I think it's good not to see the same style too consistently across the routes.
Eliska there just pausing, that camera really capturing every second of her face. She bumps out to the jug, brings her feet through.
Another climber with a lot of endurance, so I think this could potentially be a route that suits her as well.
Yeah, this crimp that she's about to go up to has caused a lot of problems for the athletes so far.
Making the decision to climb backwards, which is fairly taboo in competition climbing. I think, like, I just remember being taught by Mo coaches from a very early age that, like, not just to avoid climbing backwards at all costs, but sometimes it can be the right decision.
Yeah, Mikel from Spain is on the right-hand side of our screen. Eliska on the left.
He had, again, another one of those climbers with really, really drastically different results in the qualifications. He has a top on the second route and then 61st place on the first one.
That move is so dramatic that we just saw him drop there. To make that work, the athletes have to launch into it, feet swinging off the wall. And we can just see an example then from him of when it doesn't quite go right. Look at that style with the knee bars in there. As you said, good at endurance, resting her way through it and looking strong so far.
Yeah, absolutely. She's got a really strong lock off as well. She's able to just like Mina Markovic style, just, like rip her chest into the wall and just like sit there, unmoving. And again, almost sitting on the hold at the moment.
I was about to say, that resting position, really good, just pressing herself into it.
I wouldn't be surprised actually if we see another top right now. I think she's looking really solid if she can score this match and then keep moving.
Yeah, just right on the left-hand side of that Chamonix sign as a hold. That's what she's eyeing up, and there it is. One more, and then it's a big push out to the left. She sticks, gets the foot, and she will top it out. She clips the final quick draw. You have to do that in order to get a top. Fantastic performance from her. Eliska coming down.
And the rain is starting to get a bit heavier, I think.
It's stepping it up. I'd say we're at...
But the wind has calmed down, and I think that's almost the most important thing. As I said before, the wall's quite steep. So as long as there's no wind, the rain is it's an obstacle for the athletes, but it's not an obstacle for the competition. You know, you have to be careful behind the wall and on the stage, but as long as there's no wind, the holds should stay dry. Hannes Pumann still holding on to his high point from earlier on in the round.
Yeah, Hannes has had a good year, really, all round so far. It's been great watching him climb. And yeah, currently in the top position, but we're about halfway through at the moment. This route's both the men and women getting fairly high in it. Sometimes these competitions can go a bit quicker if they fall off early, but today we're in for the full blast here. Certainly most athletes making it into the top quarter of the route. Luka Podča there from Slovenia. Easy to forget that he's only 19 as well.
Yeah, another young athlete with a lot of promise. Kind of stamped onto the circuit pretty early on with some pretty, maybe not necessarily exceptional results in total, but especially across qualifications, you would see him perform on routes where you knew he was like in with a good shot at finals and podium positions. I think he's improved a lot with regard to the decisions that he makes. He was very, very prone to making mistakes or having slips, but with regard to his physical condition, he was one of the more prepared climbers. And so for him, like bridging that gap, I can see him being a real force on the World Cup circuit.
And remember, all these athletes will be looking for Olympic qualification in 2024 for Paris. And it's kind of cool to see this new group coming up at the moment. You can almost see your future Olympians kind of blooming in front of us at the moment.
Absolutely, but then I think it's also climbing is really nice. I'm by no means old. I'm 24, but it's really nice to see that there's a wide age range in which you can be successful. And like for me, I'm in the shape of my life at my age now, and then you see other climbers who peak quite a bit earlier, and it's really cool to see that if you put in the work consistently, you can be a strong force on the circuit, like at almost any age really. We've got like Dinara Fakritinova coming up later on in the round, who I don't know how old she would be now, but I know she's been on the World Cup circuit for a really, really long time, and she's probably doing some of the best climbing that I've ever seen from her, you know, especially across the qualifications.
That is Ashima Shirashi on the left-hand side, a star certainly of the climbing world. And the first time she's back this year so far.
Yeah, she had a timeout on one of the qualification routes where she was looking pretty comfy and pretty strong. So qualification placing maybe not necessarily indicative of the shape that she's in. So it could be cool to see if she's able to speed it up a little bit and make it happen today.
Yeah, it's nice to see her back on the scene. It's funny, you think of Ashima and all I can do is think of her as that very young kid crushing boulders, and now here she is. I think she's 20 now and just...
Yeah, for sure. She's, yeah, I know I have some friends of like parents of a younger athlete who thought Ashima was like the same age as their kid, like 12, 13. I'm like, no, she's a grown woman now. But still, yeah, still climbing super well. It's really cool to see, and it's been fun to see her, I think, like enjoying the sport an amount more maybe now that she's getting a bit older as well.
Yeah, I think she might have felt the pressure perhaps early on when she came in. I think everyone expected her to be the sort of huge star and immediately win.
I think there was a lot of really unfair pressure on her quite early on. I remember her first World Cup she came through, and I think she placed 5th. I think it was in Arco, and people were like, yeah, I think they may be just expecting another Yanya, but I think when someone is hyped up in the media, it can be a really, really unfair portrayal of exactly how successful they actually are. You know, she's able to step onto the World Cup circuit and start taking positions in the finals in the top 5 and making podium positions.
We just lost Luka there from the right of your screen. You just caught him. He was very high on the route, almost topping that out as we stick with Ashima.
From our commentary booth, we unfortunately can't quite see past about halfway on each of the routes. Yeah, so not quite sure exactly where he fell then, but it looked pretty high. I'm keen to see the score when it pops up on our screen.
Ashima cutting loose on that little crimp there. She's got that little flick that she does on those moves, which is fairly unique to her. Yeah, we also can't see out the top of our commentary box because everyone is currently using our commentary box to shelter in.
Yeah, absolutely. Which, I mean, fair enough. It's pretty wet outside. I think we've definitely got a...
We've got the good seats, haven't we?
Starting the round, maybe not so much, but now we have the best seat in the house, for sure. Yeah, so it looks like Luca took a provisional high point with a 45 at this stage. That's what we've got on the app, so hopefully we'll get confirmation of the screen on that when we've got some time.
And now Ashima nears the business end of this route, up onto the head wall, the vertical section of the wall.
She's a bit of a genius when it comes to working through these like really three-dimensional sequences. So if she can stave off the pump, I think she'll be able to come up with some really, really creative solutions for the last section. I think it's really about like putting your body in the right positions to be able to make the moves as easy as possible through this sequence.
Ashima getting a lot of support from the crowd as she presses out to the right. We've seen two tops already. Are we about to see a third? Ashima reaches up slowly onto that big volume, and we know that once you've got that, so far, the athletes have been in at this stage. Ashima up to the Chamonix side with the left. Now she needs to bring the right through before this final teeter out to the left. Which she gets, and we are going to see a top from Ashima Shirashi. It's in, and our third top, and we're still only halfway through.
Top city in Chamonix.
Top city, Alona.
Oh my
it is
God.
a top city. I mean, it is a great place to be.
True. It's one of my favorites. My first ever lead World Cup in Chamonix, and definitely one of my favorite locations on the circuit. It's just visually phenomenal. It's insane. You just can't understand until you hear, I don't think. You're just absolutely encased by white-capped mountains. It's insane.
It's a
really
playground.
nice.
Stefan on the wall there from Team Austria. Slight hesitation there as the rope just caught, or the belay not letting rope go quite quick enough.
There we go, and we've got a confirmation of a top spot from Luka Potica as well with 45. Good few moves away from Hannes Kuhn.
Yeah, the men's route, we've seen a lot in the early 40s or late 30s, just showing where the crux of that route is.
A lot of big numbers still, so across both routes, it's definitely like an endurance battle. Talking about the cross-play between bouldering and lead, and I think this is definitely a route that would favour lead specialists. It's getting pumped and then being able to climb while being pumped.
And why do you say that? What about this route is better for those kind of league ones?
Well, I think typically boulderers will prefer a route where they're able to like fight through some early cruxes and some early hard moves before the fatigue kicks in, and this is very much the opposite. You have to be able to climb calm and collected and have a really high level of fitness so that when you get to the cruxes up high, you're fresh enough to be able to stick them. There's lots of really, really like physical but also quite precise movements up here as well.
Stefan going very well here, had a slight hesitation going up to that undercling. Just loses him before the head wall there. You could see he was starting to go with that grab, looked a bit...
It was very sudden. Yeah, he was climbing well, and then all of a sudden he sort of had that little jerk, and then it's hard to come back from that, I think. It's incredible how quickly you can sap. You can feel like you have a lot of energy and then like one little mistake. So now we got Natsuki Tani from Japan. There's another really, really young climber who again made a pretty exceptional stand on the oh wow. I don't know if you guys can hear that from home, but our first crack of thunder for the evening. Yeah. Hopefully it doesn't get too much worse. I know on the circuit in the past we've had some problems with thunderstorms coming through France, so...
Let's see. We're still talking to you. It doesn't matter about the monsoon.
Most important thing is that we get through the semi-final. For a World Cup to have an official result, there has to be at least 2 rounds, hence them moving the men forward today. I think they saw a higher likelihood that if they tried to get the semi-final done today and it doesn't happen, at least they have a second chance with the final tomorrow, or to, in theory, rerun whatever they might choose to do, deem best. However, you know, if they'd left the men out of the semi-final today and then tomorrow got completely rained out, you have half a competition, and which is obviously not ideal with everybody having to go through so much to get here and make this all happen.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, actually, because I mean, normally during World Cups, it's, you know, a lot of travel, that's difficult, but during these COVID times, the amount of hoops that people are having to jump through for it, and the athletes just want to perform at this stage.
Yeah.
We've done this COVID time, we just want to get out there now.
Yeah, it's really hard. Obviously, the pandemic, it's not over. I think we've very much become desensitized to it, learning to live with it. Vaccination programs are taking the edge off a little bit in a lot of parts of the world. But in the same vein, we still have to be careful and conscious. But also, yeah, I'm appreciating the opportunity to kind of resume more normality to an extent. It would be nice to be able to see that grow a little bit. It's really cool to see competitions coming back. But even better than having competitions back would be able to have having everybody at the competitions without having to sacrifice so much in order to be here. Like, for example, getting back to Australia, for instance, from Europe is looking increasingly difficult these days, and I know that's a similar battle for some of the other athletes as well. And so more than ever before, I think the climbers, a lot of the climbers that you're seeing here, especially climbers from non-European continents, are sacrificing more than ever in order to be on the circuit.
Tani just having a little look down at the clock there. She chooses to pause here to rest. Again, that relaxed style of climbing that we see so many of the Japanese team utilize. Effortless from her. But now let's see this crimp, because interesting with the cross through there and then the heel to lock herself in.
Yeah, taking the heel in, the crimp as well in drag, with just the first 3 fingers completely open rather than a crimp where she would close her fingers over. And it's like very much a stylistic choice, I think. Some people are stronger in one position than the other. I think a crimp like that, typically I would find myself like really bearing in with my thumb and closing my fingers over the top of it. But yeah, she's just able to like stick it in and just like lay back, basically.
Yeah, I'm from the lock off those crimps school of thought when I'm pumped.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I think my thumb is my strongest digit, and so I really use it as much as possible.
One quick draw to go then. There it is in the middle of the wall as that spotlight follows her up towards the top.
And we can see the rain falling down through the front of the camera.
Leg shaking under that tension there from her as she bumps up. Just took a moment to down climb a little into a better resting position. And now she's got these final few moves to go, pressing up. Sukatani will match that hold, which she does. And now you can see from this angle, a little left side pull. She looks in complete control at this moment, never really looked in doubt, to be honest.
Yeah, really cruisy, really calm. Taking a nice little swing on the last hold.
She's still swinging around as she tries to go up for that clip.
Super calm.
Don't drop it. She doesn't, and that will be the top for her. Another top in this women's semi-final.
It's always I think it's bittersweet when you come out relatively early or not in, you know, the last sort of 5 climbers and you top the route in the on-site format, because on one hand you've done as much as you can, but on the other hand you've done as much as you can, you know. You're kind of at the whim of the other climbers essentially, and you don't really have that opportunity to have like gone any further. So hopefully we see all our climbers who top the route also making it through to the final.
Yeah, it would be a shame if we didn't. Certainly a top, you feel like you deserve it. And that is our leaderboard at the moment. Still those climbers without a score to go. And we're just having a little break in proceedings so the route setters can clean the route for the men, certainly. Not sure if they're going to be doing that for the women's yet. It's about halfway through, or a little over halfway through, which is where we're at. And we're in the lead semi-finals here in Chamonix. And that is our current leaderboard at the moment. Top 8 athletes going through. So Martina Demel right at the bottom at the moment on 40. Such a high score so early on, as we've been talking about. Manhili having problems with that 9, falling low and early. And Luchka Rakovic down the bottom, she will be the last athlete out, having qualified first from the qualification round. And Campbell, at this stage of proceedings, considering we've got rain, they're going to have 26 athletes going through on those holds. Coming out last might not be the best position to be in, perhaps, if these conditions continue as they are.
Yeah, I guess anything can happen, anything can change. In theory, conditions could dry out, although I wouldn't count on it. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's really necessarily any clear advantage generally in coming out first or last across lead climbing. You know, the routes get cleaned halfway through, as we've seen. Yeah, in this instance, maybe not, but it's really just like anything, a dice roll, or not quite a dice roll, because I guess you climb and you earn the place that you come out in, and so it's just whether or not the weather decides to be on your, if the weather's on your side or not.
We're watching Camille Pougin from France.
She looked really strong in the qualifications. She she put in some really good fights. It was cool to watch.
Yeah, she's on the bottom half of this route. You can see that line coming up on the wall above her. That's where the angle kicks up a little bit, even more overhanging. So these crimps, and then the athletes have to work their way to the right. You can see the orange route snaking up to the right. Again, another thing we wouldn't see in many commercial gyms is these routes taking up so much space on the wall.
No. Yeah, they definitely snake their way up the wall as well. And we have these like super long draws to help reduce the drag, which is the sort of the build up of, would you say, friction or resistance, yeah, as you're pulling the rope through the clip, which is an obstacle in and of itself. It takes a little bit of time to get used to because, again, yeah, it's not something you typically see when you're training in the gym, even at like high-level facilities like the one in Innsbruck, for instance. And so navigating these draws, if you miss them and they start swinging around and they can get tangled in them, it's a skill in and of itself to be able to navigate clipping the draws.
Sounds like a nightmare to me. As if they haven't got enough on their minds, they've got to deal with that as well.
There are a lot of things to think of and only one chance to put them together.
Camilla now gets through this traverse to the left, so you go right and then you go left. And from now on, it's certainly straighter as a route. Right heel hook on the top of that volume. Sort of semi-rest here in order to make that clip. And then she'll drop down onto this undercling for the right hand. Out to the big side pull jug. And this crimp has been causing problems, but she deals with it well up the left. Again, we've seen some athletes go with the right and then the heel, but she decides with the left. Camilla on her final part of this route, but we see another top.
Yeah, if she can keep her head together, she's looking strong so far.
Me and Campbell are moving around in our commentary box trying to dodge the rain that's coming in on us.
It's getting pretty grim. There's not a lot of space. If I move my head slightly in one direction or the other, I'm wet. There's some water on the screen. There's water on our table.
We're just giving you an idea of the conditions at home, right? We're not complaining. We're just letting you know that it is very wet here.
For your information, so you can picture it when you close your eyes. It's very wet.
Camilla now on the final part of her route. These big black volumes proving difficult in this damp, humid weather, but she's doing well. Heel hooking her way up. Starting to get tired now. She doesn't stop for the clip yet. She'll have to do that from down below, and I think she's just trying to push on, but now she gets that clip in. That elbow starting to come up here as the pump kicks in, but she has hit the final hold, and we haven't seen anyone really drop it from this point. So
no, I think once you get that, we're talking about open hand and close hand, I think this is one of those holds that's really easy to stay open on, which allows you to kind of rest a little bit. She's looking really solid at the moment though. We'll see if she's able to make this next move. Not quite.
There we go, our commentator cursed it there.
Always, always.
First athlete to drop it from there, but good from Camilla. But we've seen 3 tops so far, I think.
Yeah, 3 tops so far. And 3 like solid tops as well. Like I don't think any of the athletes that topped looked like they struggled to do so. I think that was the first fight we really saw after those last couple of black features.
Martin Stranek, I saw on his Instagram, he was ecstatic to make semi-finals. He's been trying it for a while, for the last couple of World Cups in order to get here. Hasn't quite managed to make it work so far.
Yeah, because he was a very consistent, pre-COVID, very consistent World Cup finalist actually in lead. And I think he has some medals in bouldering as well. Another one of those climbers that traditionally a boulderer who took really well in the transition to lead climbing, and I'd say now it's probably his specialist discipline.
I mean, he's an 8C plus outdoor boulderer. He's just got so much, and he's 31, so much experience as well.
And he's an absolute like ball of muscle, just strong.
And apparently he's got his twins in town watching him on this weekend.
Oh, his like as in his children?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Which is nice to get that support for him.
Yeah, for sure.
That is our top 8 at the moment for these men's final. No tops for the men at the moment, but 3 for the women. Martin Stranek using that toe hook, and he's looking good at the moment. But Martin tends to perhaps fatigue, perhaps get tired a little quicker because perhaps of that bouldering background, but so far, about halfway up, he's looking good.
He's one of those climbers that I think traditionally is just very quick and precise and tries to be as efficient as possible. He's not necessarily racing the wall or racing the clock, but he doesn't like to waste too much time. He just gets to it and gets going and tries to execute everything as quick as he can.
Presses out. There are some holds you can't quite see on your screen there, and that's what he's grabbing. And he goes for the heel hook method. Most athletes who use this get that left hand up and then they get a right heel, which he's done. Takes a moment to rest here. Quite a secure position if you can get it, but not long as he quickly presses through.
Yeah, starting to fight now. Those elbows coming up.
Elbows coming up is something that you hear a lot from climbing commentary. Could you just explain to us about why that's a sign that perhaps the athlete's getting tired?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. I think you start to like lose power through your fingers and you start to employ other muscles through your shoulders to try and compensate for the lack of force you're able to apply. I think as you get pumped, you lose the ability to really like squeeze with your hands essentially. And so yeah, and you start bringing the elbows up, which allows you to like really push down with those other supporting muscles. And it can be quite a tough position for your shoulders to deal with as well.
Ideally, we're looking for straight arms from the athletes. That's the best position. But Martin Stranek here going very well. He's fought through that pump. Seems to have found a second wind here as he nears the top.
Close, I think close to standing on the bolts just then, but I don't think he did. I think he's all good.
Yeah, you have.
Oh, nice.
Takes a fall there, but I reckon Martin's going to be very, very happy with that performance. He looked like he was struggling and then suddenly seemed to find something. Campbell was just chatting about the bolts there. The athletes are not allowed to touch or stand on the bolts. And in fact, this is something that you've experienced today in the quarterfinal. Tell us what happened.
So in the qualifications, I pulled onto my first route. I climbed relatively well. And then was cooling down in the warm-up area behind the wall, and the judge comes up to me. He's like, "Oh, I think you might have stood on a bolt, like, going to check the footage," and then they deemed that I had, and then I climbed really well on my second route and appealed it because it was, you know, going to bump my place up if I was able to go back up to where I was, and unfortunately, no, I definitely stood on the bolt, and it's something I'd never done before. It was really interesting because people say the most ridiculous things, like, surely when you felt something underneath your foot, you didn't stand on it. It's like, well, you think if I felt something underneath my foot, why on earth would I have stood on it? It's it was really nice to see some of these bolt blockers coming into play. Bit of a shame maybe to see less of them here.
I've been told that we are going to expect them at some point during this weekend.
I think they're in prototype from what I can understand, so they're still trying to figure out exactly what the best way to employ them is, and whether running the risk of having bolt blockers that athletes can use is worse than having athletes accidentally step on bolts. Potentially, you know, like getting fingers stuck in bolt blockers and that sort of thing. Like, they do pose really, really interesting considerations. So on one hand, it's a shame. It was frustrating. I was nevertheless happy with my climbing, and it surprisingly didn't influence my result as much as one would have expected, considering I lost about 17 moves from it. But it is how it is. It's something that you have to be careful of, and it's really nice to see some steps being taken to sort of improve. And there's definitely work to do. And I think having done it myself, I have a little bit more appreciation for people I've seen do it in the past, like when Adam did it in Hachioji for the Olympic selection. And it's really easy to brush off as something that won't happen to you, and then reality strikes. You're like, oh no, this can happen to everybody. We're not always watching our feet all the time. And sometimes, like little accidents happen. It just is how it is, I guess.
And it is nice to see some development in the sport, as well as these bolt blockers we've been chatting about come in. Expect to see more and more of them as the competition unfolds. That is Masahiro Higuchi from Team Japan. We've seen a lot of him in the last last month really, of this busy period of IFSC competition. He's done well in bouldering, he's done well in lead.
Yeah, strong all-rounder. The rain started to ease off a little bit, which is good to see. It's more of a drizzle now than a torrential downpour, as it was starting to look like for a second there.
Yeah, it has pulled back a little bit, but it's very wet still. But we're having fun here in Chamonix. My name is Matt Groom, and I'm joined by Campbell Harris in the commentary box. Sorry, Harrison. Harris, what am I calling you?
All good, all good. I get all different variations of my name, especially in Europe. I have two surnames, essentially.
Yes, it is confusing as a name, but
yeah,
I like it. It's a strong name. Masahiro on the right, as the women's route is getting cleaned on the left. They're clean just to take off the excess chalk, dust, sweat, tears, whatever's up there, just to make it a nice fair playing field for the all the athletes. Masahiro bumps up. There's your bouldering move there. Seemed like he was considering a more complicated beat to get through there, and just thought, you know what, I'm just going to go for it, going to pump up, jump up.
Yeah, maybe from the ground he read a more complicated sequence, and in that moment he just had to trust his body essentially, and just go for it. But now he's looking a little bit confused and a little bit less certain. And I think this is one of the sections we've started to see athletes come a little bit undone, because it really does shock the system a little bit.
What tactics do the athletes use when they're backstage in the isolation area just to remind themselves this route? Are you constantly air climbing the thing, or is it just in your head?
It's really, really different for everybody. Some people are able to just memorize the route from the get-go. Some like to walk back in and draw the route straight away. Others, starting to start. We'll pause for a little bit while we watch him finish off his potentially his last few moves of the route. and he's gone.
Yeah, you could tell it was coming, couldn't you? Those microphones picking up every part of his struggle there.
Something, I can't quite, you know, pinpoint it, but something indicated that maybe he was coming to the end. But yeah, no, I think there are a lot of different tactics and techniques that you can use to help you memorize the route. Personally, I don't put too much pressure on memorizing it. I think I like to use my 6 minutes to run my body through, obviously figure out the tricky sequences and just kind of run my body through how the route climbs, so that when I'm on the wall and when I'm pumped and all of my energy is focused on just doing the next move, I've kind of like freed that capacity, or freed up that space that I would be using to figure it out. You know, it's like I'm telling my body, giving my body the information before I pull onto the wall, and usually in that last little bit before I pull on, that's enough time for me to just like put all the pieces back together, anything that I might have lost. Generally, we'll speak to each other quite a lot about the route, because 6 minutes is it's a short time to memorize 50 moves, and sometimes someone will have a different idea to what you will have. And I think it's really easy as well to see climbers climbing one after the other and think that they somehow have some kind of knowledge of what's happened before them, but really, like, we come out, all we hear is the sound of the crowd, we come out and we have to figure it out on our own. It's the first time we've seen the route and we have no idea what's happening beyond that.
Yeah, always keep that in mind when you're watching these competitions. These athletes have not climbed the route, they've not practiced the route. Paul Jemft, he came 6th in Villars. He's won many, many competitions in the youth circuit. Another 18-year-old here today looking to make this transition from youth into the senior circuit. Paul had a great qualification run as well, looking very strong once again from him. Using those little pockets, the undercling for the right-hand side. You can either bump straight up with the left, which he does, or you can use that blue and yellow hold as a little slopey intermediate, which he decides not to really use. But now he'll use it for his feet as he matches that slopey rail there. Leaning back, hips away from the wall. And little micro shakes as he goes up there, just trying to get rid of the pump from your hands, your arms. Being fast and accurate is important on that bottom section, because this is where the route really starts, when you come into this 3D section in a minute.
Looking comfy so far through those first slopers as well.
Yeah, Paul's certainly one of the favourites to get into the finals here tonight. Said he made it last week in Villars.
Now the support of the French crowd as well, I'm sure, would be, it definitely makes a difference having people you know there, like, able to support you and cheering, and having that, like, the noise of the crowd backing you up, I think is can be really empowering when you're on the wall.
I'd like an Australian World Cup, please.
Yeah,
I want to go out there and climb and watch climbing.
Yeah, I mean, it might not be that far away. We'll see, hopefully. I'd like to think that we'll have a bouldering World Cup or something of the sort, you know, within the next few years, or maybe a little bit longer. I think the sport is developing really, really fast, and we're starting to, develop that appreciation for it. It's really nice. I'm really excited for the future of competition climbing within sort of the Oceania region.
Molly Thompson-Smith on the left from Great Britain. The Brits struggling a little bit to get over to these competitions at the moment in Europe due to the COVID restrictions, the quarantine, the tests. Molly coming over for training and deciding to take some World Cups in as she goes. She has not competed at this level since Moscow, really.
Yeah, it's been a while for Molly, and I know it was a huge battle for her to come over for all sorts of reasons. But she's, super grateful to be here and really excited to be in semi-finals again. I know she was hoping for a hard semi-final, she told me. So she hasn't gotten that quite to probably the extent that she would have liked. But you know, she's really, really strong, consistent lead climber, and I think she has, without a doubt, the capacity to top the route.
Yeah, we've seen her get medals before. We know she can do it. Paul Jemft, meanwhile, is nearing the top of his wall. Are we going to see a top for the men? You can just see him. He slaps up. He was going. Paul wanted to top that, but look at that smile on his face. He will have loved climbing in front of that French crowd and support. Have to see the scoreboard in a minute as we stay with Molly Thompson-Smith. Yeah, Molly certainly likes a certain style of boulder. Physicality is key for her. I think that's when she enjoys it the most, when she's climbing.
Yeah, Molly's she has a really, really strong sort of campusy, flowy cut and, you know, put her feet back up sort of style. I find she makes every move look kind of like she's floating a little bit. Like her arms just bend. Like she's not actually pulling any weight in order to make them do so. Pull-ups are just very, very second nature.
Yeah.
I watch Molly do like one arm after one arm, no problem. It's really cool.
She climbs like the climber I'd like to be.
Yeah, that's exactly right. 100%. But she's looking quite careful, reserved maybe. I think by this point she would have a good understanding that the route is being topped. And so Molly's definitely, you know, she really wants to be back in the final, back on the podium. She was in the final at the last World Cup in Chamonix. And so I think it's really, really important for her to make it through to the next round.
Yeah, because with the amount of tops we've seen so far and the amount of women we have to go, it could be a case of you have to top the route in order just to get into the finals.
I think so. I wouldn't be surprised if at this stage the final is 8 straight tops or more. I don't know if we have any ties really coming through. We have a tie for 5th place as well, so depending.
Molly, meanwhile, having to fight a little bit here. She nears the top of her route. What will her fitness be like now as she comes to the black volumes? Shaking a lot, trying to rest her way through. You get the feeling that she could be nearing the end here, but she's a fighter.
I worry that she's been like a little bit slow and a little bit reserved coming into this last section maybe. But I know she's, you know, she can pull it back together. She's quite good at recovering. She fights super hard. This next section, I think if you put yourself in the right positions, can be somewhat forgiving. So hopefully she can find those solutions and pull it together.
Molly now trying to find a knee bar there in order to take some weight off her arm. She's really having to battle through this. Pressing up, clawing her way through, not giving in. Almost gets that right hand on. And I think you're right, you can tell just from her body language, she knows that's good, but she knows that today on this route, it's not good enough.
Yeah, immediately and she might think that more people have topped the route than they have, but nevertheless, like, you know, based on how fast the route is going, like the turnover from climber to climber, you know that people are getting quite high whether or not they're topping. It's quite, and especially once there's already been one top, the crowd doesn't respond as much. So as far as she knows, after Nolwenn topped the route, everybody topped the route because everybody's been out for a really, really long time. The crowd doesn't really respond in the same way, and so yeah, it can be quite difficult to put that out of your mind. Sometimes it can be helpful to assess that information, but other times I think it's really just a hindrance. A lot of athletes will choose to play music so they can't hear the crowds at all. But I know, like, for myself, for instance, I don't like to sort of bring myself out of my surroundings. I like to stay very relaxed in that regard, so the music can be kind of like suffocating a little bit, I don't know. But a lot of climbers like to just completely close themselves out, so they have no idea what's happening otherwise, and then they just climb.
Amazing insights there from Campbell. Thank you so much for that. It's so good to hear what you guys go through on a regular basis, because obviously we're in the seat, but we're watching Stefano Ghisolfi here high up on this route. Not high up, but halfway through this route. He will certainly be looking to get into finals, but now starting to battle a little bit as he finds a different method, cutting loose for a second and bumping the heel up. Stefano Ghisolfi in a little bit of trouble here, but one of those such experienced athletes is not going to prevent him from working it out, and you can see now just starts to rebreathe again after that moment.
Yeah, he had a rough result, it looks like, on Route 1 from qualifications, and it's really, really hard having semi-finals on the same day as qualies. Like, sure, you've only climbed 2 competition routes, but like the amount of work that goes into warming up is quite a lot more than people would generally expect. Like, some climbers will climb for 2 hours plus. You know, in the warm-up area, maybe they've already done a couple of like 8B plus circuits, and then they have to come out and on-site a route. You know, it's a really fine line between being warm and under or overcooked. And then having to come out and do a 3rd route for the semi-final after cooling down completely and then warming up again. You've climbed for like 4, 5 hours maybe for some climbers across the day if you've got all 3 routes, and it's a lot. It's really, really hard.
Stefano Ghisolfi is motoring though through this route. He's really put on a turn of pace here. On the left-hand side, we're watching Salome Romain. On the right, Stefano Ghisolfi from Italy. As Stefano now slows slightly. Makes that low clip. We haven't seen a top for the men's yet, so we know how hard this is as Stefano just drops back down. There's not many rests in a minute. You have to launch into this head wall and just go for it. Salome on the left makes the clip, and she's starting to struggle just a little bit, but campusing her way through that section without feet. Stefano eyes the top, but he just pops the right hand as he went up. But he's happy with that performance, and that should be good enough at the moment. Lots of athletes to come though, we'll have to see. Remember, keep updating your scores on the IFSC app. It's free to download, so you might as well just go grab it for the season, get it, and you can follow along, and we'll keep you updated as well. Salome is 25. She has made finals before, but no medals to her name yet.
Salome is one of those climbers that I think, like, when she's on the wall, it's hard to watch anybody else, because I don't know if you can tell from the screen, but she's teeny weeny. She's tiny, like less than 5 foot. And so she has this, like, out of pure necessity, this just exceptionally dynamic and powerful style, like we have already seen at the beginning of the route. She just has to go like full gas for every move. It's really cool.
Yeah, well, this is an example of it. Look, having to use momentum to swing under there, can't just reach out and get it. You started smiling the second she started climbing, so
yeah.
Someone you really enjoy.
I love watching it. I have a lot of respect for her. I don't know her personally, but watching her climb is always really, really cool. Sometimes, you know, she's just a little bit small, which is really unfortunate, but when she has a good climb, it's really fun to watch.
Let's see if she can put on a performance for us tonight as we get into the final. 10 or so athletes in this semi-final. They were linked together. If you're just expecting the women's tonight, it was added to the men's because of the bad weather forecasted for tomorrow morning. And it hasn't been great tonight, but we're pulling through at the moment. Look at those mountains in the background on the right of your screen. So cool to see.
You can see the glacier as well if you look closely.
Yeah, spectacular scenery and spectacular climbing. Salome on her final third, really. This crimp has caused a few problems, and that's a good angle just to see how bad it really is.
Looking super fresh still, like not a lot of athletes, even the more confident athletes weren't necessarily shaking out so comfortably on that hold, I don't think.
And now she's starting to fight a little bit. I think the problem with this top part of the route is it looks like there might be some rests in here. It looks like you can maybe get a knee in, just relax a little bit, but I don't think it climbs quite like that when you're on it.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. And I think her height could be a factor, being able to like really weight those slopers and sink into them whilst also having the handholds above. She might be a bit more stretched out and like beyond being able to do that, but we'll see. Like I said, she's looking really comfy still.
She really is. And we're going to see another top for this women's semi-final. She slowly brings that left up, decides to go
and
for
see,
the one
she's
before.
going to have to, she can't, I don't think she could really like lock off and creep to that hold in the same way that some of the other climbers could. Or maybe she just didn't find the body position in order to do so as well.
Martin Bergan from Team Slovenia. You hear us talk about Team Slovenia a lot. They have got a very big, very successful team. Of course, Janja Garnbret, the most successful women in climbing. She's not here this weekend. This week, he's saying weekend, thinking it's a weekend. We're actually sort of beginning of the week, aren't we?
Monday.
It's Monday.
Yeah, Monday, Tuesday World Cup.
Happy Monday, everyone.
And then a very, very, very quick turnaround for the Briançon World Cup on Saturday, Sunday.
Hey, who wants to sleep, eh? No point. Look at that scenery as dusk starts to descend. You can see the waterfalls cutting through the forest on the right of Martin.
Almost looked like he wanted to cross there for a second.
Yeah, he's going to pop up for that hole, but she sticks and nails. And actually, that method we've seen a few athletes use, I think it's potentially the best if you just spot it quickly. But the problem is, by the time I think a lot of them have decided to jump, they've already tried a few things first of all.
Yeah, and I can imagine like seeing a feature like that, there's probably lots of discussions about, can we wedge our body in? Is there some kind of no hands rest somewhere? Like, what can you do with it? And it's going to be, oh, that was a shame. He was, I thought he was putting in a good fight just then.
Laura Rogera from Italy. So many wonderful performances from her over the years. She's one of the Olympians that is still here.
It's probably worth noting, actually, I just noticed then, Eliska Adamovska clipped the last straw, but she actually ended up timing out on the 54th hold, and that's why we have 3 tops in the scores and not 4. I think most of the climbers have racked up quite a bit of time. Molly was at 5:20, Michelle Huliger 5:20, Ashima topped at 5:20 as well. So they're running it on the cusp a little bit.
Yeah, they've got 6 minutes to climb these routes. Time is a funny one, isn't it? Because sometimes it's not a factor.
Yeah.
You know, it just doesn't matter. And then suddenly routes like this, it does start to be important.
Yeah, and it can catch you by surprise sometimes, you know. You might average like about 3 minutes on a World Cup route generally, and then all of a sudden you find one that's your style and you just can sit back and vibe really on the wall, you know. And it's no problem at all.
Laura finds the knee bar there. Isn't choosing to stop too long, just using it to make the move easier. And she'll get the heel wrapped in and now take more of a rest. Laura's so good at resting like this. You see her do it so often. Gets a lot back in these moments.
Yeah, kind of wrestles through the moves and then just sits back and gets it all back in between.
Silver medal from her last week in Villars. And she's had a good lead season so far. As she builds her Olympic preparations up. This is likely to be, well, will be the last comp that we'll see her in before she flies off to Tokyo.
Yeah, it's pretty soon. Pretty soon. I was talking to Jan and he was saying that he won't be in Briançon because he's flying to Tokyo like the next day. Yeah, it's all coming up.
Yeah, after the COVID year wait.
Yeah.
And the 4-year wait before that, it's felt a long time, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's going to be a very, very different Olympic Games this time around, I think.
Laura occasionally struggles with the time every now and again, but
I was wondering how she was going to go with this toe hook sequence because her shoes don't have any rubber on the top, but she's managed to figure out a way. Oh, there we go. She just does it anyway.
Yeah, I think it's one of those toe hooks that's more about sort of just helping the move rather than you have to get it in.
Yeah. Yeah, it's looked pretty solid for everyone. Like, there's no one who's really struggled with it so far. I think the volume itself is quite positive.
statements any pro climber can use. I look at that slopey volume and think that's positive.
Oh, we're terrible. We'll be like, oh, it's a jug. Like, how did I fall? And it's like a V10 move. Yeah, it's really bad.
That I have experienced. I've climbed with pros before, and it is depressing how strong you guys are. But it is, I think it's worth remembering that, because the levels that these athletes are displaying here tonight really is so far above what you will see most days at any crag.
Yeah.
You know, this is the true elite of our sport.
Yeah, it can be funny as well, seeing like some of the comments in the YouTube streams and stuff about what they think that we're doing on the wall and the level that they think they're climbing. They're like, oh yeah, I've climbed 8B before, so like maybe I should do a World Cup. And it's just like, I think it's really, when you see like 9A plus climbers dropping 8A plus routes, it really as a testament to exactly how much goes into a single competition attempt.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, this is a lady who's climbed 9B we're watching here, and look at her fight through this top part of the route. On our right, we're just seeing Marcello Bombardi from Italy.
Had quite a strong qualification round. He's coming through quite high. Took his first and only win so far here in Chamonix, so
a good place for him.
Yeah, maybe if he climbs well, he'll be able to take another finals position.
Right, let's see the top of Laura's route now. She rocks up these static moves she's so very good at, and we saw that in Vilas. She comes back to the little side pulls, onto the final hold, and we're going to see it at top for Laura. And watch for that smile. It usually comes, oh, she just looks exhausted on that one coming down. There's the smile, Laura.
Again, it's probably the feeling of like, I've topped the route, but so have so many others. So it's a little bit of frustration, because you want to be putting yourself ahead going into the final, so that if it comes to countback, also with the weather, cancellation of the final is a very real possibility. So a lot of people will have in their mind that there's a potential that the gold medal is at stake in this round, because tomorrow might not happen completely.
Marcello dramatically taking the fall there.
Yeah.
He wins best power scream so far of tonight. There's an unofficial competition going on. Prize money is more than the actual prize money for the event, but it's all underground. No, but that is a very good point, because the top sort of 8 athletes at this semi-final, they've seen the weather forecast. They will be thinking, hang on a sec, thunderstorms, torrential rain forecasted. This could be it.
Honestly, fortunately the forecast got better, but I remember yesterday thinking that, like, what if qualifications doesn't happen or doesn't get finished? Like, how do we move on? I remember one time we had in youths, at Youth Worlds in China, we had a comp get rained out, and every single male athlete from Youth B, A and Junior went through to the semi-final the next day. And then you're like, if it rains again, what do you do? Because like we said before, you have to have a minimum of 2 rounds in order to declare a result from the World Cup. So fortunately, the rain held off for the qualifications. So we just have to get 1 more round out, and then we're safe. And hopefully we're able to have a final as well. I like our chances, you know, like we've seen some fairly heavy rain today, but the wall seems to be dry and the organisers are still managing. So
yeah, I don't think it's really affected the holds on the route. We thought it maybe the humidity would be a problem. I don't think it has been so far.
Yeah, no, I think we're all right, all things considered.
Well, we're getting through the semi-finals. That is Momoko Abe on the wall at the moment. She's 18, hasn't done that many competitions, but a progression rate to finals at 50%.
50% from two competitions.
What is
I think that was just the first one, little practice run, and then
and crushing it from now on.
I'm always so jealous of climbers who you know, they just kind of get into the flow straight away, or takes them maybe a couple of comps, like, oh yeah, I see now. I feel like sometimes I'm only just like getting into the flow. I think it was getting into the flow and then COVID happened, and now it's like the flow all over again.
On the right, that is Yannick Fluet. I saw him just before he went into the isolation zone, and he was so relaxed this afternoon.
Yeah, he's always super chilled. You would if he wasn't wearing the uniform, you'd hardly even know he was competing at a World Cup because he's just taking it in his stride. And I think it works to his favour really well.
It's been one of, for me, doing most of the season this year from the commentary box, just the opportunity to see what these athletes are like outside of their outdoor environment, because I've worked with a lot of them climbing outdoors before.
Yeah, of course.
But to follow this tour, it's amazing to see the personalities and the way they deal with competitions coming through.
Yeah,
and everyone's different.
Yeah, it's a really, really different environment than climbing outside as well. Especially for a lot of the climbers here, the outdoors is like a recreational, relaxing space, and then the World Cups is very serious, like game on, and so you're meeting two different personalities almost sometimes, and then sometimes you get climbers who just take it all in their stride, and it's all pretty, it's all pretty chill. It's all good fun.
Yeah, anyone watching Sean Bailey last week in Villars, he was the epitome of chilled as he cruised his way up.
See, he seems chill, he looks chill, but he wants it bad. Like when you get to know him a little bit, you realize like how badly he wanted that win and like for how long he'd been expecting that of himself, It's like you don't always get the full picture, I don't think, from what you see on the stream. It's really easy to see him as like this like chill dude just going through life, but like he put in some hard yards. His first years on the circuit before the United States were better supported were really rough, with very limited resources, and he was like really putting himself through the paces, and so it's cool to see them have like a little bit more going for them as a nation, and then seeing just how well they're able to perform when you put the hard work and the dedication together with the resources that they now have available, and it's pretty exceptional.
Yeah, we'll be seeing him very shortly out on this stage. Yannick Floet on the right and Momoko Abe on the left of your screen, as we see both sets of climbers climbing at the same time and almost mirroring each other in the position on the wall. Yannick just cuts loose there, but makes that move stick. Bumping up, you can see as he gets tired, he's starting to use a slightly more explosive style, less static, needing to get these moves done quick. Just falls out of our shot there.
Just out of energy, I think, and fell short of the next move.
Momoko Abe, she's on her final part of this route.
Watching her climb now, I'd be very surprised if she doesn't score a top as well. She's looking cruise control.
Yeah, there's not a lot of fatigue on her face at the moment, but now struggles a little bit with that clip, but drops back into a resting position. Fights for this press move, but if she can creep her hands over on this final hold, we don't see a lot of drops from there. Up she goes, she finds the screw on and immediately moves through. Oh, and just pops the left foot there, deciding a heel instead of a toe. You can see that hole just blocked by another to make it a smaller gap. Now she's looking like she's struggling on this final move. She goes out slightly dynamically and doesn't quite have enough.
Yeah, just shy of the top there. Yeah, just started to lose it at the last little moment, I think. That the foot slip kind of, I guess she would have lost quite a bit of energy because her feet came off the wall and she's holding on to quite like a slopey, blunt hold, so it's easy to understand how she could get to that last move and not have the explosive power to finish it off.
Here is Soto Amagasa. He was 17th in Villars. And his first adult bouldering course, that was only back in Maungeen at the beginning of the season. He came 6th there, so another athlete who's just come onto the scene and immediately performing.
Yeah. As they do from Japan, really. How many Japanese athletes don't make the semi-finals on their first run? I think there's I don't even want to call it a running joke because it's probably true. It's like that Japanese nationals routes are harder than a World Cup, and I'd believe it, honestly. The depth of the field there is so strong. I think, they're bound kind of by country selection quotas as to how many athletes they can bring to the World Cup, but we see, when the A team isn't here, the B team takes clean sweeps of podiums, like we saw in Briançon a couple of years ago. It's just there's like another climber ready to go for everyone we see on the podium or in the final.
And I think for a while we saw sort of the Slovenian team and Japanese team, in terms of teams doing well, it was the two of them out in front. But this year we started to see a few other countries stepping it up a bit as well. That French team I mentioned earlier, they've had some wonderful results recently.
That's always the way it goes. I think years ago it was France and Austria that were really leading the field, and then other countries come through and learn new techniques, they get new talents kind of growing through the sport. And it always changes and shifts, and competition breeds competition as well. You know, when there's like one athlete that's ahead of the field or one team that's ahead of the field, the people who are chasing will work that bit harder to try and catch up.
And facilities. I mean, we see some countries, again, I'm thinking Austria, we just come back from there, in Innsbruck, that gym there, which is just so phenomenal. That must make a difference.
Oh yeah, 100%. Having access to the facilities, more so necessarily than maybe being in your country, just like being able to go and visit them. I think the big factor with the Japanese team, or one of the big contributing factors with the Japanese team, seems to be them training together and having such a strong team spirit, I guess, and also just like the level and frequency of competitions that they have. You know, they have to be on form and competitive for their national cups in order to be selected. So when they come to the World Cups, it's not such a big ask to be on form. You know.
That's Nina Artaud from France on the left, and we've been watching Sota Amagasa on the right for a bit now. Nina choosing to rest quite low down on this route. She's only a few clips in.
Again, probably aware of the fact that she has to climb quite high, conserving her energy. Soto managed to find one of those little presses that the route setters were telling us about a little earlier.
Sota Amagasa, he's got through that middle section. Now he's eyeing up the last part of this route. And this is where you start to see the male athletes slightly just get a little bit shaky on this top section. The physicality starts to kick in. And you can actually see one of the bolt blockers that we were chatting about on the wall, just where his head is now, that smooth looking hold shining the light. Sota, though, drops the left.
Yes, that's one of those full bolt blockers, and so they're nice for blocking the hangers themselves. But I think the ones to block the quick draws, the ones that you clip the rope into, are a little bit more complicated. You know, they can't fit too snug to the bolt because then they restrict the movement of the draw itself. Can't go too far because then climbers might use them. There's a risk of climbers getting fingers stuck. I think that's something that's also really important to note, is that us as athletes on the wall, I'm not concerned for my life one bit while I'm climbing in a World Cup. I'll run past the draw, I'll do anything, and I think it's the same for everybody else. You know, we're not really thinking about it, we're just thinking about the result, and so yeah, we might try and use what we can, and so it's really important that everything that's there is as safe as possible, and so, you know, it might just take a little bit of time while they perfect exactly what it is that they're going to be using to minimize this ever-growing problem of people standing on bolts. I feel like I don't know if maybe the judges are just more aware of it now. I never remember it happening 5 years ago when I started World Cups, and now it's so common, so common.
So I wasn't laughing at you, I was laughing because obviously you experienced this today, as we talked about earlier.
It's one. I think everybody has that fear in the back of their mind that's could just be a matter of time, before I just accidentally tap it or toe hook it or whatever it might be in the moment.
We're watching Nina Artaud. She almost went for the heel hook rest, which she's seen used quite a lot, decides better of it, instead goes for the quick clip. And this is where we've seen, for the women all the way along, this is where the real fight starts now. It just depends how fresh you are when you get to this point.
Oh, she's looking confident, comfortable still, but a little less confident, a little unsure of herself maybe. She made finals a couple of years ago in Briançon, and I think since then, there's a bit of, I'd imagine there's a bit of internal pressure to do the same again.
And she's really fighting now. She just catches that right. Looked like she was off for a second, but wakes it stick. Now she heel hooks. Finding this energy, this determination from somewhere. You can see it on her face. She's not giving up on this wall. French crowd getting behind her, of course. She rests, desperate to find a little bit more power in those arms. This intermediate is small and crimpy. Now she pulls this awkward clip up, but she's got to pull it from the right into the left.
And she'd have to know that coming out 9th that if she tops the route, she has a really, really solid chance of making it through to the final. But just falling short on that little block crimp.
Yes.
But I think it was a really, really good effort from her to be able to pull it together like just below the lip when she was starting to look a little shaky. I wouldn't have thought that she was going to make it that far, so that was really cool.
Yeah, when she was shaking out on those volumes, you could see. Sean Bailey, we were chatting about him earlier. We were saying, is he chilled or is he giving it everything? Well, it's a bit of both, I think. It's great to see Sean winning on this stage. Of course, he won last week in Villars.
Yeah, this has been a hell of a year for Sean.
Yeah, it really has. And what's he like on the circuit? I mean, I don't know how much time you spent with him recently, but as you said, he seems chill, but there's a bit of a fire going on.
I haven't caught up with Sean yet, but in previous years I've spent a fair bit of time with him, and yeah, like he really likes climbing, but he has like he like embraces the masochism of training for climbing. Absolutely, like like training is pain, but he digs it, you know, I think. But yeah, he takes like the joy and the struggle of elite athleticism kind of in equal measure as well, you know. He likes to have fun with it, but also like he's here to win.
Yeah, we know Sean's got gold medal winning potential. Will he make it work here in his semi-finals? Of course, as we know, anything can happen. I remember Adam Ondra a couple of weeks ago in Innsbruck. We thought he was certainly a favourite for a podium, and an early slip paid to Adam, so nothing is definite here in competition climbing. Sean now, as night pretty much has fully fallen on us. It's the spotlight lighting our climbing wall here in Chamonix, in the centre of Chamonix. Sean just looks like he's putting no effort in. You know what I mean? He's one of those climbers. It's just, he's got a floaty style.
He's very floaty. Yeah, that's exactly the word.
Now he down climbs, decides to go up with the right hand instead. Almost went too low on that, somehow
yeah,
just upgraded.
Just fell shy of the little crimp at the top, but managed to bring it back together.
Just lost it near the top, but that is good for him.
I think like, yeah, just a little bit of fatigue set in, and he kind of like lost tension on his feet, and like it all just blew at once, really.
We'll wait to see where he is on our leaderboard. Ryu Nakagawa from Japan. She's in action. 4 men, about 6 or 7 women to go. The women's route was just cleaned earlier, that's why they're slightly behind at the moment. Well, you get semi-finals where the athletes are falling off in the first couple of metres, and you get ones like this where we really get to study a route in its entirety. And it is interesting, isn't it, just seeing the different ways they get through it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. It's an unusual kind of semi-final, I think, for sure. But yeah, it's nice to have varying styles across each World Cup. You don't want to see the same thing, and you get to see like different athletes shine in different ways. Yeah, it's really nice. And I mean, when you've got such like a lot of climbing to get through in order to get a good result, like there's a lot of room to make mistakes. There's a lot of room to make mistakes, and so you really have to be like focused. Even though the route is like quote unquote easy, at the same time, like we said before, there are very few sports where mistakes happen as fast in climbing and you just can't come back from them. And so, yeah, there's a lot of room low for you to just do something silly, fall off, and you've placed last on the easy route. You know?
Presumably there's a bit of pressure as well, because if you know a route is easy-ish and you should have the ability to climb it, then you start thinking, oh, what if I don't climb it? You know, what if I let myself down in this moment?
I think there are a few things worse than, in a competition scenario at least, than knowing that someone has topped the route and you still have to climb. I hate it. Because like immediately there's that pressure that you know it's possible. You know that if you want to be number one, there's a clear-cut point, and I think it can be really nice in an on-site round not knowing where you have to get to and just being able to focus on climbing. That's kind of one of the stressful things about qualifiers is you do know often you have an idea of where you need to get to if you're going to progress. You can let that go in the semi-final, until you have a round like this, you start hearing the tops, and then that pressure comes back, and you know there's just this like really clear-cut point. There's going to be really hard moves or really tricky sequences right before the top that are designed exactly to spit you off. And you've got 6 minutes where you have to be like dead set focused the entire time.
One thing I've really loved talking to you about tonight is the fact that there is so much more, isn't it? I think we tend to think of climbing of like, how much training has that athlete done?
Yeah.
You know? Like, can they do a one-arm pull-up? You know, it's like, we put it into quite simple terms, when in reality there's so much that goes into this.
It's super complex, exactly, and I think that's why, you know, we don't just see, aside from climbers like Janja perhaps, we don't just see the same climbers winning again and again and again and again, because there's just so many factors and anything can happen, and anything can suit. And see, exactly, like, such a surprise.
Yeah, we lose Reu there from the route. And didn't look like she was having a problem, so maybe we can see a replay of that in a minute. But Sascha Lehmann, such a popular man at 23 and 51 World Cup, so he's very, very experienced, of course. And Sascha just one of those characters on the scene. He just, again, he kind of exudes calm from him. You get the feeling that he's there. And yet, when things start to get stressful for Sascha, you can see it on his face. He's expressive.
I was about to say the exact same thing. I'm like, he exudes calm. I'm like, oh yeah, but when...
Until it gets going.
Yeah, when he's stressed. Which is funny, because when he won was one of these instances we were talking about where you had to top.
Yeah.
Like, there were multiple tops in that final, and you had to climb perfectly on a quote-unquote easy route. And he just like completely held it together, which is not necessarily what I would generally expect to be Sascha's style necessarily. But he's and when talking about climbers who are well trained and can do one-arm pull-ups, this guy can do like 15 one-arm pull-ups.
It's a different world, I tell you.
Yeah.
No, Sascha is so strong, and that's what he's known for as well. But now he's having to turn that physicality on as he cuts loose. Just pops off with the right there, I think, with the heel. Coming up to 20-10 Central European time. A long semi-finals here, so thank you for joining us. And if you're sticking with us, don't turn off, or don't turn your computer off, or your TV off. We've got some climbing action to come for the men. Sascha Lehmann looks to make his bid for a finals place here tonight. Just choosing to rest on these underclings. He's very good at that, finding the little rests on tiny holds that others might not spot. Let's see how fresh Sascha's arms are as he nears this top section of the route again. This is where we see most of our falls take place, is this final head wall section. Sascha almost peeling off there when he went up with the right bump. And watch those elbows start to rise. We talked about that earlier. It's a good tell that an athlete is getting a little tired, but
talking about Sascha's style, though, I think fighting is definitely where he really excels. Like, when he gets into that sort of zone where he's a little bit fatigued, he starts climbing really well. I think he's almost like too strong for his own good, you know? Once he has to wait until he's tired before he's really able to do all the right things.
He had to fiddle a quick draw, then he wanted to clip quicker and he can go, but now he's popping for the top and just loses it.
I thought he had that. He was so close.
That is the closest we've come, I'm pretty sure, to a top so far.
Oh yeah, definitely high point, for sure.
That is Vita Luken Sasha still getting the cheers from the crowd as we turn our attention to Vita. No stranger to finals, of course, but she has not got a medal yet for lead. Sasha Lehmann is currently on top with 47 plus. That's been confirmed, followed by Stefano Ghisolfi and Paul Gemft in third place at the moment. We've got 3 males to come. As we watch Vita Luken on the women's route into one of the only rests, really. There is a big heel. There, she gets it in. She'll be looking to keep her body weight to the right-hand side. There's no holds on that left. She'll just want to use those volumes. Started to get a little colder here in Chamonix as well.
Yeah, I just started shivering a little bit. I was just thinking the same thing. Tomorrow's weather coming through.
No, neither of us have brought enough clothes here in the commentary box.
But it's nice and dry, at the very least. Well, it's not raining anymore currently.
No, they've definitely improved the conditions. Slight breeze coming through, not as moist. Vita Luken struggling here, though, on this move. Now she's going to have to generate momentum all from her core. That will have been tiring for her. She crosses under. She takes this opportunity on the undercling for a little rest.
Tell you what, when you said it was 9:45, having come from Australia, obviously I'm not jet lagged anymore per se, but I've been having some very, very early nights, and I was like, oh God, like I'm not up this late very often these days.
I'm so sorry, and I nabbed you so early on in the morning to get you to talk as well. I'm sorry
like,
about that.
Oh, but it's fine. I need to adjust. I think because I've been living on my own for like the last 2 weeks. I'm like, yeah, I'll go to bed at 8 p.m. Why not?
It's the dream.
Yeah, absolutely.
Vita Luken bumps up with the left.
But, it's not helpful when you've got semi-finals and you might have to be climbing at 10 p.m. You know, so ultimately I think this is a good thing. This is good for me.
I'm helping train you. That's what's happening here.
Exactly. Thank you so much.
Son, it will be semi-finals, finals.
Yes.
I'll just take some of your paycheck. That's all.
Ah, fair enough.
It's only fair enough. Right, Vita Luken. Let's see how she works out this sequence. We've seen athletes getting here pumped out of their minds and yet somehow still managing to make it work. She looks fairly fresh at this point. She checks the clock.
Yeah, super comfy. As long as she's got time, I think she should be able to piece it together.
Vita seems to have really come on in the last couple of years. I remember when she was sort of on the verges of breaking through, but not quite there yet. And recently she's really stepped it up. Hard to be a star in a team full of stars.
Absolutely. Yeah, Slovenians are another one of those teams. But not quite in the same way that the Japanese have like so many athletes. They just have this really elite few. I'm sure the field is deep in Slovenia, but yeah, it's like consistently the same people at the top.
Vita, though, looks like she's going really well here at the moment. We know this final set of moves is droppable though. We've seen it happen.
Yeah, she's pretty confidently resting without the jib on that last sloper. Just got to keep the tension and one last pop to the last move. No problems.
Another top. Vita Luken clips that draw, gets it done.
And there's a bit of I think we'll see a bit of a change in we've seen a bit of a change in the emotions of the climbers who top, because the ones who've qualified in the top 8 know that no matter how many people top, if it goes back to qualifications, they've made it through to the final. And so we see immediately that moment where they know that they've made it.
Yeah, the count back to the qualifications will be used to differentiate these athletes if they've got the same score. The same with the finals, go back to the semi-finals. In fact, that's something we saw last week when Janja versus Laura for the win. Victor, brother number 2 from Canada.
He had a ripper of a qualification as well. It's really cool to see him placing so high.
Yeah, 2 brothers. His brother Oscar climbing earlier in the competition. Victor turns that hold into an undercling and bumps out right. This is where all the screaming starts right now. Holds the cut loose beautifully. So much core required for that move. Into the crimp, but he's going to have to quickly bump with the left this time, not with the right.
And really redlining, I think. He's like right at the end of what he can do.
Misses,
but
somehow,
oh my God.
2 times he went up.
That was a cool fight though, I think for, he's relatively new to the circuit from what I know. So I'm sure he's still just like stoked to be through to the semi-finals in such a high position.
Absolutely, I mean, you're in Chamonix here in front of a huge crowd and a massive audience watching at home, so it does make a huge difference just being here for these guys. You can see those veins standing out in his arms. On the right-hand side is Dinara Fakritinova from Russia. Dinara, very experienced, 71 World Cups and 36% through to the finals. And of course, that gold medal and a bronze medal to her name. So keep an eye out for this. Qualifying high up the list. 6 women to go and 2 men before the semi-final comes to an end. Things had changed up earlier in the day here, if you're just joining us. So the women and the men were climbing tonight at the same time. It was meant to be split before with the men tomorrow, but for tonight, we all get to see them at the same time. Dinara having to fight early on there a little bit. Now starting to find her rhythm perhaps more. Yeah, so experienced. This won't be phasing her at the moment.
Yeah, it's really cool to see her back on the scene, like kind of old school-ish. Or fairly old school. Like, I remember her, you know, competing very much alongside the reign of Jane Kim and Mina Markovic, and in their sort of battle, she was very ever-present in the finals, and like, I don't know, someone who I kind of just assumed wasn't coming back to the competition circuit, and then when I saw her names on the start list, oh, that's pretty cool. And then when I saw her name so high in the qualifications in Innsbruck and so high in qualifications here, I was like, oh wow, she's back and she's in really, really good shape. And I think it's so nice in, you know, we've had a really, really young presence, a lot, especially in the women's field lately. Like, you know, this notion that, oh, maybe climbing is like gymnastics where athletes peak early and then their careers may be finished or whatever the stigma might be. And it's like, no, it doesn't have to be that way. I think you can continue to perform with the right training and the right approach.
Well, the amount of things that we've been talking about today, that all the external pressures as well as just climbing, having experience actually at some point does start to really help. You know, you know how to manage it better. Yeah,
100%. It can't just be about how strong you are and how fit you are. There's all those factors of experience that come into it as well.
That's Domin Skofitz on the right, multiple World Cup winner. Hasn't quite found perhaps the form he'd want so far in his 2021 season, but it could all change here in Chamonix. Qualifying 2nd position for this final, so he's in form. He's also got a whacking great big new climbing wall at his house with some new lead routes on it, so I think that's probably helping him as well in his training.
I'm beyond excited for that facility to open. You got to check it out, didn't you?
I did check it out, yeah.
Insane.
And it was amazing. Before the lead routes were put up, but yeah, I got to see it. It was very, very cool. Dinara is nearing the top of her route. Starting to fight a little bit more perhaps, but while we've been watching Domin, she's really moved through this route very, very quickly. Lots of time left on the clock. Domin now having to battle through. Domin clips from a very interesting position there. He's scrunched right up underneath that hold. One of the only athletes to make that position work so far.
Easy top for Dinara as well. There we go. Oh my God. Oh, wow.
We lose Domin as we were watching Dinara then. Campbell, I didn't see that. What did you see?
His foot blew, and he just like peeled. He was on bad holds, and all of a sudden he was off.
Domin is disappointed. He's walking right away from the crowd, looking up at that wall. He qualified in second place.
Yeah, that will be not a good finish for Domin. Not the sort of finishing he would expect.
And that's confirmation of it outside of top 8 at the moment for Domin Skofitz. As we said, anything can happen on this wall, and he was looking so good before that fall. And that is the remainder of our men's lead semi-final list. I've got different lists from what I'm seeing on screen. We've got a few more athletes to come out, yeah. And that's the women's lead semi-finals. And look at all those top 5 all topping out. That is Alberto Gines Lopez.
He's looking really good form this year. Saw him training in Innsbruck and also at a gym in Switzerland as well. And yeah, looking pretty unstoppable on the lead wall as well.
I'd heard that perhaps he was in a slightly less good frame of mind coming from that youth series, but in the last couple of World Cups, he seems to have found a bit of consistency with his climbing, and certainly when I interviewed him last weekend, he just seemed really happy just to be here and climbing at this kind of standard.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm sure. It's hard to do so many competitions. You either train through and don't perform as well as you'd like in the comps, or you rest and prepare for the comps and like don't really get the opportunity to train quite as much and develop across the season. You can definitely, I remember my first World Cup season, I really deconditioned throughout the competitions because I just hadn't learned to manage the training load yet, alongside with trying to perform also, and so it can be really difficult to get both alongside one another.
Yeah, we know when Alberto's in the right frame of mind, he performs so well. Will today be his day? And on the left is Julia Chanaudy. One of the few women here tonight to climb 9B, Eagle 4 at Adamondra route. She managed to tick quite a few months ago now. Alberto just, again, flowing through this bottom section, just trying to keep himself nice and calm. Alberto cutting loose there, not quite finding the toe as quickly as he wants. We're going feet first through this section. In order to get that rest, he will drop it down in a minute.
Yeah, some funky creative sequences that we haven't seen necessarily from a lot of other climbers.
Yeah, Alberto doing things a bit differently so far.
Not always known, I think, for doing everything the easiest way, but he just like grits his teeth all the way through.
Let's see how he manages with this bit. We remember we saw that foot pop from Domin earlier on, just losing him. Alberto, just one of the first athletes I've seen on that move to spot the little pop jump and just do it straight away without trying to fiddle around.
Yeah, it's without too many issues for him, for sure.
This isn't a split screen, the athletes together on one camera angle, which is cool to see as Julia.
Yeah, nice to see them climbing at almost the exact same height of the wall, like following the same pace as one another. It's really cool. I'd love to know what's going through Julia's mind, especially just like with the pressure of knowing that she has to finish the route. Like, surely she would have to know at this point that it's a top, or not a top or nothing necessarily, but
Well, top 5 are currently tops. I mean, we're getting that way.
Actually, yeah, probably a top or nothing.
Oh, we lose Alberto in that little section before it becomes the head wall, as the spotlight dims.
Yeah, and I think you need to make your way over the head wall in order to go through to the finals, so might not be enough.
Alberto missing out at the moment. And we can see that's that top 5 tops so far. So he really is at that stage where it's top or nothing.
And top within the time as well, like we've seen, you know, had some climbers not quite make it, or one climber not quite make it in time.
Julia Chamonix going well at the moment, but having to work for this now as she just finds that left sloper. And now presses, takes a second to chalk up. And she'll creep her left hand up. Decides to clip off it, which we've seen a lot. Slightly tricky clip, that one. Julia, will she stamp her authority on this semi-final? Will she get a top? Milking this rest.
She's got the French team screaming for her.
She's got about a minute to go here, I think, from what I can see, but it's hard to see the clock from this angle.
Closing her eyes and taking a breath and just probably trying to relax and stay in the zone. Just a couple more moves to go. You don't want to leave anything to chance here, so she just wants to make sure she's got as much energy in the tank as possible for that last couple of sketchy moves.
Yeah, she's really resting.
Yeah, milking it.
She hasn't got long, she's only got a couple of seconds left, really, to get this done. She might have misjudged it. She's got 9 seconds from what I can see. She's gonna get the top.
It's hard to see. I think she actually had about 40 seconds left.
Okay.
Yeah, it's quite difficult to see from where we are.
Yeah, I'm peering around a corner trying to see the clock here, but Julia gets the top. Tony Yoshida, our final male athlete out at 17. He's leading the way. He was 13th in Villars. Won the Asian Combined Championships in 2019. And he'll be final athlete out on that men's route. Still some women to go, though.
Victor Baudron sitting right on the bubble for finals there, 41 plus. How many climbers have we got left, sorry?
For the men, this is the final male climber.
Oh, there we go. So
Satoshi Yoshida.
So finalists for Canada. Long time since they've had a finalist who wasn't Sean or Alana, I think.
Yeah, we knew we'd get some new names in this final. That's what we're going to see. It's going to be an exciting one tomorrow, so make sure you join us here in Chamonix. My name is Matt Green. I'm joined by Campbell Harrison. Thank you so much for being with me tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome listening to your thoughts.
Yeah, always lots of fun to sit in the booth. It's definitely a very, very different experience of viewing the final, but it's cool. It's fun to hear, to be able to give insights, but also hear insights from the other side of things as well, and see what it looks like behind the scenes a little bit. Although I must say, I would rather be climbing in the round, and it was really close this comp, so hopefully in Briançon you won't have the opportunity to chat to me.
Exactly, I don't want to see you here with me. I just like having you here.
It's a good.
We just saw a very early fall there from Satone. Just didn't misjudge it, so didn't judge it quite right. Aoife Maria Hamamula from Austria. She's on the women's route on the left, and we'll stick with the women for the rest of this competition now, as all the male climbers have climbed. So our top 8 will be confirmed very soon for them.
Aoife spent a lot of the sort of COVID, no competition period, climbing some really, really hard routes outside, and I think she actually made like quite some strides during that period where a lot of climbers were maybe. So I think a lot of us found it difficult to find the motivation. She's like stepped up her game, and seeing her qualify so well is really cool. I think it's been like a little while coming, and I think she's definitely had like a lot of potential for a while now.
Yeah, I think this year has been a real breakthrough for a lot of these athletes, and I think you're right. I think we saw some athletes perhaps getting demotivated, others just using it as an opportunity to get unbelievably strong.
Yeah, it's so strange having like that gap in time as well, because we're so used to watching athletes ebb and flow in their form, and all of a sudden we had this time away where some athletes we hadn't seen at all. And it's just like everybody's in completely different shape and has completely different things going on in their life and whatever else it might be. And so it's it's a new game really coming into this season.
Yeah, it's been a journey this season. I remember when it all started, we were thinking, gosh, this is the first time we've been back in a competition setting of World Cups in a while, and now...
Yeah, you're telling me.
Yeah.
There were coming here was crazy. There were like 44 people on my entire flight. Like, yeah.
It's first class, like you deserve, surely.
Almost, yeah. International travel from some places is for like a lot of people literally impossible, and so to have the opportunity to be able to take part in events like this as an athlete is really special.
Yeah, it's been good to be back and seeing everyone performing again on this world stage. Aoife. She'll know she needs a top to really guarantee that place.
Can see the bands on people's wrists and people's ankles, just indicative of making sure that we've either had a COVID test or that we're vaccinated, and vaccinated with enough time after the second dose to make sure that it's all valid, keeping everybody safe, which has been good to see. That wearing it on the ankle is definitely the beta. I put mine on my wrist and like just kind of regretted it. It wasn't like, I don't know, it's just like a mental thing of it sitting there feeling like it was in the way or whatever. So next comp it'll definitely be on my foot.
There you go, adjusting the micro beat. And Aoife takes a fall. She gives a nice smile to the audience, but I think she's a bit disappointed with that. It's not going to be enough to get her into the finals.
Yeah, it'll be hard to know. Obviously, she knows that there's been tops or that there's been lots of people climbing quite high, but it's hard to know exactly where people have been getting to. And yeah,
so an indication of how. This is our men's top 8 at the moment. So the final those 8 athletes will be going through, and Sasha Lehmann will lead the way. Stefano Gisolfi, Paul Jempf, Luca Potka, Sean Bailey, Martin Stranik, Victor Barund, and Yannick Floe in 8. So that's our finalists for tomorrow. Yeah, I was just about to say that you can see how steep this wall is by the fact that every athlete who gets lowered off from high up hits the stone rather than the stage.
Yeah, it's almost, I was thinking that in qualifications, I'm like, it's like as long as you don't get lowered onto the stage, because if you don't lower onto the stage, you know that you've made it into like the last third of the route. With the qualifications, you had to get really, really high in order to qualify for the semis. So like, as long as they lower me onto the floor and not onto the stage, like I'm in with a shot.
And that is our current top 8. You can see 7 out of the 8 finalists at the moment have all got tops, so it just shows. It's not the best night for the route setters, but it's been good to see some climbing action here tonight. Next up on stage will be Alexandra Dotkova from Bulgaria, the 16-year-old who's had a real impact so far on this season. As we just look at our final 26 athletes, they're the athletes to come. 3 more. And there is Alexandra from Bulgaria. I met her properly for the first time today, and I was really impressed with the maturity from her. She is only 16, and yet so together.
Her climbing style reminds me ever so slightly of Cara Condi from the United States, I think. Maybe Cara's watching this. But, yeah, I don't know. Just ever so slightly, just like...
In what way? What characteristics are you looking at?
Well, like, it's a little bit rapid, which I think Cara would, agree that she has like a rapid style. I don't know, but it's like, it's powerful and it's committed and it's fearless. Yeah, she's just like going for it. And it's not a typical style that we see, especially in the women's, I think. It's always very calm and collected and like meditative almost. Mm-hmm. But nah, she's just
Alexandra's
running the
got
gauntlet.
some power, hasn't she?
Yeah,
as well?
yeah, super powerful. She's gonna just like squeeze her way through the route. But still, like, and in the same way, I think the other like comparison with Cara is it's still like very technically proficient and precise, but rapid and quick. And sometimes I think externally it can look stressed. I don't know if it feels stressed, like when she's climbing, because obviously she's still performing so well and really like holding it together. But yeah, it's really cool. It's an interesting style. It's nice to see something a little different at the top step of the comp.
Yeah, I think it can be a bit of a trap unless, sometimes you see climbers fighting and you think, well, unless they're cruising it, they're not doing very well. When in reality, it's their style sometimes. They have to be more explosive.
It's such a tricky mindset to break out of, like, that, you feel like if you look like you're fighting, that you're doing something wrong. But it's part of the game, The routes are hard, like, however you get to the top of the wall is, the most important thing, as long as you're getting there.
Right, this next section, she's going to have to swing her feet over to those tick marks. That's what she's aiming for. We've seen a few different ways of doing this. You can kick off. We've seen a few athletes get kind of stuck hanging in the middle and having to use a lot of core strength in order to swing through. Not using the toe hooks. Positive volume, as we chatted about earlier.
Yeah. A lot of people don't like toe hooks. I think you can't really like secure them as well as you can like a heel necessarily, and so I can understand the motivation behind avoiding them. In the men's qualifications, actually, we had a foot first toe hook sequence, and I actually like had different shoes on each foot because I knew that one was going to stick better with the toe hook. I had my like preferred shoe on my left, but I'm like, no, this toe hook is better. I'll use this one. Just so it's like nice and solid, and it worked. It was a good call, I think, in the end.
There you go, gear choice, very important.
Yeah, a little bit of a battle there for the match. Whether it could just be the stress of knowing that she has to climb quite high, I'm not sure. But like not 100% composed on that one.
Yeah, she is. That style you were talking about, that slightly grabby method. She's starting to just speed up a little bit in order to get into this next section. It's not quite as pumpy, this next part. There's an opportunity to rest a little once you're through it. And she's got time. Will she get the top she needs? Working her way now, crossing the hands through, and a little cut loose, and a snatch. She does look like she's about to fall at any moment, but keeps going. But now she's got to work for this press. fingertips on it, makes it stick. Clipping from down low off that intermediate. We haven't seen many do that.
Oh, this is stressing me out.
Every move you think she's overcooked it, hasn't quite got it right, and yet somehow she's still on there.
Yeah, it's like she's just too strong, like physically.
Can she keep it together? One move to go now. A press out onto the left. She's eyeing it up.
Oh,
it almost goes out of the spotlight then. She went so sideways.
Yeah, wow.
Well,
that was
8 women, 8 tops in the final so far.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun to watch though. That was really, really cool. Like I really wasn't sure if she was going to pull it together from a couple of draws down actually, but yeah, wow.
It was cool to see.
Finals like that can be exciting in their own way, I think. It's a lot of watching and waiting for the top, but yeah, it can be cool.
There you go, 8 women in the final with tops at the moment. It's going to be a count back to qualifying at some point.
Yeah, the whole top 8 are a count back to qualifying. Which, yeah, now we've just got to hope that the weather holds out and we can have a final tomorrow and they get a fair opportunity to, you know, get a really good split.
We will. I've had a word with the Chamonix weather gods, don't you worry.
Ah, yes.
It's going to be blue skies and sunshine,
What's
maybe.
the opposite of a rain dance?
I have no idea. It's a very good point. I sunbathed earlier in the rain and that did the trick, you see.
Yeah,
perfect. I was out there in my Speedos while it poured.
I just can't believe it. I was literally, I got like sunburnt on my nose this morning and then, yeah, wow. We've still got one more climber to come out. Two more
women.
Sorry.
We've got Natalia Grossman and Luchka Rakovic.
Ah, yes, of course. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. 2 more climbers to go. And Natalia is out on stage right now. She's actually wearing those little blue things you put over your feet when you go to a swimming pool in order to keep her shoes dry. Just took them off camera there.
Yeah, it's so important to have like those little. There's so many little things that I think you bring to competitions that like you don't use, and then until you don't have them, and then you wish that you did. Stuff to cover your shoes, towels, etc. Hand warmers as well. It's like a beta I've become kind of privy to at the really cold competitions. You get those like hand warmers that you open them up and you shake them and they get really hot. You can chuck them in your chalk bag so your like hands keep warm during your warm up.
Yeah, I think there's a certain brand that uses a chalk bag like that, which same kind of theory.
Also, I like to have one of those like instant ice packs in my bag for competitions as well, so that like if it gets really hot and I need to cool myself down, just like bang, straight away, it gets cold. Good for bouldering comps especially.
Yeah, all part of this experience, preparing themselves, and also having mentors with you to teach you this stuff, because
yeah,
you know, you got to learn it from someone.
Yeah, absolutely. It's nice. The climbing community is very like open and communicative. So those role models don't necessarily have to be your coaches or your teammates. There's like, I think all of these tools I've learned from people around me, because most of the World Cups I've been to, I've been on my own or a part of like 1 or 2 athletes, and so yeah, it's nice that people take each other under each other's wing, and there's a lot of like information and support to be shared. Even here I'm the only Australian, but it's like hard to feel alone because there's always people around that'll lend a hand or just like hang out with you, you know. It's good. It's a really nice group for sure.
Yeah, and something we've seen with this COVID stuff is just how supportive everyone has been of each other, because it's been really quite touching actually watching all the athletes in the crowds in stadiums where we can't have audiences and just seeing how much support there is. It's wonderful to watch.
Yeah, a lot of us are really, really close friends, and yeah, not necessarily the friends that, like, you would expect people who come from all sorts of different places and speak different languages, and there might be all sorts of barriers to those, like, relationships, but, like, they exist nevertheless. You know, when you spend so much time on the circuit, sometimes, like, some of your closest friends will be ones that you only see at comps.
Natalia Grossman resting well. Something she's so good at is finding these rests in either split positions or high heels. But we know what the stakes are here tonight. She'll need a top in order to get into that finals. No pressure. Natalia's climbed so quickly to this point.
She's just so outstanding this year. She's always been good though. Like, she was, even a couple of years ago, like, very much capable of top 10 results. I think she kind of flew under the radar. I think maybe her results at the US selections hadn't been quite up to par, so she wasn't maybe climbing in as many World Cups, and I know she had an injury as well that kept her out of the game. But then, like, this year, there's just nothing stopping her. Yeah,
she has found a different level, of course, winning lots of medals with the bouldering and then starting to convert it to the lead as well.
Yeah, I think that's been the most impressive thing, is I've always known her as a high-level boulderer, and then when she stepped onto the lead circuit, I was like, oh wow, she can kind of do it all.
Yeah, and she is doing it all now. 3 holds to go. And if she does top it, she will be through into that final, so as she see what she can do in this final couple of moves here as she works her feet up left and goes up into the side pull, looking so confident at the moment. Grits her teeth, pops out left, matches, and she'll clip.
Easy, and with time to spare. Like, no problems at all.
That was very easy, wasn't it?
It looked like a warm-up.
Yeah. Really cool to see that. I mean, we've seen many tops. That has got to be one of the most impressive so far.
Yeah, that was just like, she didn't even come out of first gear. It's like, yeah, no problems at all.
Right, final athlete out tonight. It's been an epic night of climbing. We've been talking forever, it seems.
Yeah, it has been a long night, that's for sure.
Sorry about that jet lag.
Oh, but I mean, like I said, no jet lag, just old man syndrome. Like,
I'm with you.
8 p.m. bedtimes. Nah, it's good. I knew that as soon as I came out to the comps, like, yeah, Europeans eat dinner so late and just stay up so late all the time. But at home I'm a night owl, so I'm sure once I adjust, I won't be able to adjust back. I'll be back to going to bed at who knows when.
So that is our top 8 at the moment. Natalia Grossman jumping to the top due to count back to quarterfinals. Sorry, to qualifications. And Ashima Shirashi, she's on the button at the moment.
Yeah, a lot of pressure on Luchka right now. She and Ashima will be watching very, very nervously. You got to feel sorry for, like, a Nolan Ark, like, topping the semi-final, knocked out of finals. I mean, that's the game, and it's fair because, you know, it comes down to how she climbed on 2 routes in qualifications, but nevertheless, it's still a shame, I think.
Yeah, it feels harsh, doesn't it? When you top out a route, you kind of want to go through at that point, and
yeah.
What can you say at that point? You've done literally everything you can possibly do.
She's just very, very close to a bolt just then, and just goes back to, like, you know.
You've got PTSD here.
I'm so hyper aware of it now. So hyper aware. The warm-up wall, part of the warm-up wall actually has, like, hangers on it. And so for my second route, I was, like, trying to be really aware while I was warming up of where are the bolts, how am I moving around them. But,
oh, well, another day. We've got next competition in this week.
Yeah, it's nice having them. I like having them close together. You don't have to worry too much about the time in between. It's like sometimes it can be hard to get to gyms in between the competitions, and you know that you can fit in like 1 or 2 sessions. You're not going to lose too much between them, and then you can get back to training really quickly. We got a nice long break before Slovenia after Briançon. So yeah, it's nice.
Lučka is our final athlete out tonight. The men already been confirmed. And our women's leaderboard, you can see there on the right-hand side of your screen. 9 athletes topping out so far. Will Lučka be the 10th? She's climbing last because she qualified first from the qualification round. We watched Natalia just absolutely cruising this route about 5 minutes ago. So she will be one to watch for that final tomorrow night. Do set a reminder, come and join me at least. Not sure who will be in the commentary box with me yet, but someone will be. And we'll be calling all the action for you tomorrow night. Lučka, another climber who just finds these rests and manages to utilize them fully. We saw her in a splits move last weekend in Villars.
Yeah, she has exceptional mobility and flexibility. Really, really clever in the way that she uses her feet as well.
Can that kind of cleverness, that kind of awareness, can that be taught, or is that something you need naturally?
No, I don't know if taught is necessarily right. I think you have to teach it to yourself to a degree. I think you can be guided into it, but I think it takes, for some people, it takes more conscious effort than others. And I do think that when you start climbing, the age you start climbing is a factor as well. I find that climbers who learn to climb like pre-puberty have generally a better grasp of climbing movement, of the basics at least of climbing movement and flowing through climbing movement, than people who learn to climb at an older age. But yeah, no, I think it's just about time. It's like time on the wall, really, and making a really, really conscious effort to analyze the decisions that you're making. It doesn't just like come on its own, no.
Lučka, though, we lose in an unexpected position. That crimp, we saw trip up a few athletes early on, but no one recently. That will not be enough for the finals for her. A shame not to see it, but it just shows you can't close your eyes for a second in this.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, you know, the pressure of it is probably a lot. Who knows if that was necessarily why she fell, but I'm sure it was a factor. I'm sure it was on her mind.
Well, there we go, action-packed semi-finals tonight. A lot of tops for the women, less for the men. No tops, in fact, for the men. But we have our 8 finalists now, minus any appeals that might come through, but we haven't seen anything controversial yet. Time will tell, though. You never know. What a strange night as well. We started off with some wet, sticky conditions, and then it got really wet as the rain came down, and finally all blowing away in a nice end to the evening as the wind blew through. And that is our women's semi-finalists. Oh, not yet. That is at the bottom as we look up the list. Manon Healy taking a very early fall for that 9 points. Natalia Grossman leads the way. Alexandra Totkova, Dinara, Julia, Vita and Laura, Natsuki and Ashima make up our top 8. We look down the athletes who weren't quite as lucky.
Such large scores still, though, like seeing 20th place with a 41 next to it, you're like, oh my god.
Yeah.
So much climbing for 20th place.
Exactly. All the athletes having to really work for their final positions here tonight. As we wait for confirmation of the men, and there it is. Sasha Lehmann, Stefano Ghisolfi, Paul Gemft, Luka Poczka, Sean Bailey, Martin Stranik, Victor Barrand, Marcello Bombardi in our top 8. Well, thank you so much for joining me here
Thanks
tonight.
for having me.
It was great. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening and the rest of the competition. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And for you watching back at home, that has been our semi-finals. We'll be back tomorrow night for the finals here in Chamonix. Thank you for watching. Have a lovely night's sleep, everyone, and we will see you tomorrow for more climbing action.